I've also said I'm a harm reduction voter, I'm a lesser evil voter, and therefore I would—
Oh my God, no, he's not. Wait, he says now he's a lesser evil voter? How many times he said I would never vote for the lesser evil? Oh.
Did you not catch this on the first one? He literally says here he'd vote for Hamas over Israel.
Wait, did I miss that? Hold on.
You say Hamas is 1,000 times better. Do you actually mean that? Or is that a rhetorical move or like a solidarity signal? Like what?
I mean, it's all of the above. I do mean it. I think it's a rhetorical move because it frustrates a lot of people. I've also said I'm a harm reduction voter, I'm a lesser evil voter, and therefore I would vote for Hamas over Israel every single time.
How is it that you can vote for Hamas over Israel, but you can't vote for Kamala over Donald Trump? What? That is a crazy statement. Okay, I'm glad that Hasan said that because I'm sure we're going to spend the next 15 minutes interrogating that statement, right? There's no way that that's just going to fucking sail over this retard's head and he's not going to address it at all, right? There's no way, right? God damn it. I'm going to get triggered watching this.
Welcome to Pod Save America. I'm John Favreau. This Sunday, Hasan Piker, someone I'm sure no one has a strong opinion about. Hasan stopped by the studio to talk about his move into electoral politics. He recently hit the campaign trail to stump for Abdul El-Sayed in Michigan, and to talk about, well, everything you've seen in the news about him lately. We ended up talking about the many statements he's made that have sparked a discussion inside the Democratic Party about whether candidates should associate themselves with him and his audience. We also debated his views on Israel and Hamas, how he thinks about the words he chooses, and his theory of political organizing.
His theory of political organizing. Bruh. Oh my God. Ezra wrote a fucking slop fest article today, too.
Can we read that?
A pig slop article. Wait, he's Jewish, not pig slop. Pick a different word, sorry.
Ooh.
I f***ed up.
It's all right.
Wait.
Dan's Jewish too.
Yeah, but I can be anti-Semitic towards Dan. It's different.
Well, I mean, he deserves it, yeah.
Exactly.
It's a conversation you need to hear for yourself, so we will get right into it. But before we do, please consider becoming a Crooked Media subscriber if you haven't already, so that you don't miss out on any of the great content we're putting out for our friends of the pod. Subscribers get our new extra episode of Pod Save America called Pod Save America
Pod Save
Only
America
Friends.
the ex-Obama people?
Yep.
Ugh.
Other subscriber-only shows like Polar Coaster with Dan Pfeiffer, access to all of our excellent Substack newsletters like Pod Save America Open Tab.
Did you know Hasan did a lot of work with Ossoff and Warnock in private because he didn't want to be publicly associated with them for backlash? Or so he claims in this? First of all, why are you spoiling? But secondly, that's just a fucking lie. Hasan was roasting Ossoff and Warnock back in the runoffs. I remember this distinctly because when Warnock's team put out a fucking feeler for playing Among Us, Hasan tried to clout jump onto it. And it was hilarious because he was just roasting them like the month before. God, it's so cringe.
Ad-free episodes of all your favorite Crooked pods, and you get to feel good about supporting one of the few independent, proudly pro-democracy media outlets left in Trump's America. So head to crooked.com/friends and subscribe. All right, here's Hasan Piker. Hasan, welcome back to the show.
It's good to be back.
You've somehow become the most argued about figure in Democratic politics over the last few weeks, so I'd like to have a conversation about why that is hopefully more nuanced and useful than much of the—
Well, here's the question. What kind of a conversation are we setting ourselves up for? Is this going to be a challenging conversation where we ask questions and follow-ups? Or are we going to have a PR slop fest? That's the question. Here we go.
discourse?
Yeah. I mean, I goes to show how serious we are as a movement, as an opposition party, this is the primary focus.
Central to the discourse.
Yeah.
Just a quick recap to set the table for people who, lucky for them, maybe, haven't been following along. A few weeks ago, Third Way, centrist Democratic think tank, published a Wall Street Journal op-ed calling on Democrats to stop engaging with you. They describe you as anti-American, anti-woman, anti-Western, and anti-Semitic. Their evidence is a long list of things you've said, which we'll get into. They also specifically singled out a few Democrats, us, for inviting you to CrookedCon last year, Ro Khanna, and Michigan Senate candidate Abdul El-Sayed, also a former Crooked host who a few of us have donated to and who you campaigned with this week, which fueled even more controversy. Now, you and I scheduled this conversation weeks ago. I'm sure some people have had enough Hasan Piker discourse, but I do think it's an important conversation to have because, even though you and I have different politics, we've actually debated our disagreements on this show. I think there's value in doing that in person in a format that's not mediated by algorithms or a 5-minute cable hit. So with all that said, here's where I want to start. I think the rallies with Abdul this week were the first time you've been a featured speaker at a candidate's actual campaign event. And I wonder how you, self-proclaimed—
Why is his mic off? Who's doing the audio mixing for this? Hasan is responding, but the mic is turned off, or they don't have the channel unmuted for the mix. Do you hear it in the background?
I can't see the screen. I've just seen cats right now.
God, Mooten, are you serious right now?
Yeah, swap me.
Are you Serious.
I've
For the
defeated the
first
squirrels,
time,
by the way.
You've been
Oh, what'd you do?
Different seeds. The squirrels don't like these.
Oh, nice.
a featured speaker at a candidate's actual campaign event. And I wonder how you, self-proclaimed Marxist anti-imperialist, decided to be a campaign surrogate for a Democratic candidate, even one as progressive as Abdul. What was your thinking there, and like what has made you get more involved in Democratic politics?
So I've been very involved in Democratic politics for years at this point.
Oh my God.
But with AOC, Bernie Sanders, and Rashida Tlaib, Ilhan Omar, who I'll be interviewing later today. But I've never actively, I guess, stumped for a
Actively.
candidate. And
I'm just curious. I just need to look up real quick. How many times is that word going to be said in this?
What does stumped mean?
Stumps
Like gone to bat for?
campaigned with. Oh, we're only going to get one? We're only going to get one actively? Okay. Actively.
I didn't even realize, maybe I'm too I'm not old school enough to understand this, but for me, the difference between Abdul coming on my stream, which I've done many times prior to this, and me like going to Dearborn and us working out together and eating kebabs, is probably more significant than me going on a rally and like talking for 5 minutes in front of a live audience. I
can't. I feel like everybody, I'm not trying to have a big head. I just feel like all of these people are retarded or don't understand. I hope, is this John or what's the name of the guy? The difference between somebody going on your stream is that the appearance is that you're endorsing him. But when you go to his rallies, the appearance is that he's endorsing you to some extent. This is like the difference. This is how these interactions work. They're not just like interchangeable because of like audience size or platform size or whatever. But the other guy
rally and like talking for 5 minutes in front of a live audience. So I never thought of that as like this major new step. I guess it is, because the DC bubble was like freaking out about it, where they're like, how dare you do this? This is the most devastating thing anyone's ever done. And I like the guy. That's the reason why I did this. Like, I trust him. I think he has a lot of great policy opinions. I think he is much more responsive to the needs of the base than some of the other Democrats that I've been very upset with for many, many years. And I think he's exactly the type of guy that the party needs to have more of. My goal has been very clear since Zoran. When we linked up during the primary, it was a very crowded field, and he was able to like cut through that noise and become a beloved mayor of New York now.
He did it.
God.
I want to get people into positions of power that I align with politically, even if we don't 100% agree. I even have disagreements with Zoran from time to time. I'll text him some stuff. I'll be like, yo, check this out.
Oh my God, it's so cringe. It's so transparently cringe too. Holy shit. Oh, you can also tell how you can tell how inconsiderate he is of all the people that he's associated with too. Like, you can talk to any politician or any large campaign, anybody that I've associated with or affiliated with or not, like anybody that I've worked with, like all of my conversations come with a heavy, like, what is the optimal way to move for your campaign so that I'm not like a liability? Because there's always something that I'm like aware of, like what is a way that I can be associated or affiliated with this or help with this without being a liability to your whatever it is that you're doing. The idea that Hasan is like so cloud obsessed that he has to attach himself to everything without a fucking care in the world about how it might impact another person's campaign. The fact that like right now he's catching all this heat is like, oh yeah, I'm texting Zoran every single day. Yeah, we talk all the time. Like, why? Like, it's like there's zero consideration for the people around him. It's just like a clout opportunity to jump to the next clout thing.
For him.
Yeah, it's so cringe. Holy.
What are you doing? But at the end of the day, I understand that like politics is in some ways the art of the possible, right? Like, I see that. My expectation is never going to be someone coming out and advocating to seize the means of production. I'm a reformist. Many to my left, which does exist for those of you out there, there are people who are further to the left than me who will say bourgeois elections are unnecessary, and all you're doing is taking away revolutionary potential. And
is this him pivoting to try to seem like a centrist?
Shepherd.
He always does this when he's mask on. Yes.
Yeah.
When he has best friends that he goes out to eat lunch and dinner with every day who don't ever disclose it and are always jerking each other off in the background. They let him come onto their show so that he can stain-wash his reputation by coming on and literally doing the exact opposite of what he says on his streams. This is the joke that, I don't know if you caught this when Dan was saying this, when he's like, oh, I just want single-payer healthcare. This is what Hasan does when he's in front of the normie dipshits, like Pod Save America and these other people. As he goes on, he's like, oh, I'm just here to vote for, like, I'm just a reformer, guys. Like, I think that we should just make incremental progress and blah, blah, blah. And then on his own stream, it's like, incremental progress is the tool of the capitalists to control you and to make you uncomfortable with your current environment, and it's to destroy revolutionary potential in America, which is why you can't be content with the two-party duopoly. It's like, Jesus Christ. Like, but like, if you spend any time, well, no, you'd have to spend a lot of time, I guess, to understand how it works, but it's so annoying. Holy
for the Democrats and therefore a reactionary, a social fascist even. But all of that stuff is going to break the brains of your audience. I shouldn't even be getting into that. Yeah, I think if someone wants to improve the material conditions of the working class in this country, if someone says no to unnecessary, like, endless wars and advocates to bring our productive output back home, to work on ourselves, in some ways not a dissimilar message to the lie that MAGA told about isolationism and, no new wars and being the peace president. If someone actually identifies with that and wants to advance that agenda, I'm going to be there for them.
Just to broaden it out, because I do think it's useful, people who don't know and are now wondering, like, what's he up to? What does he want? Like, what is your theory of political change? Like, how do we get from where we are now? What is the mechanism to get from where we are now to the world that you want?
Oh my God.
Great question. So I am a firm believer that one of the biggest issues in the United States of America, which is the heart of empire, one of the most capitalist countries, is a proto-capitalist country before capitalism and industrial revolution even happened, is the idea that most people do not have class conscious. Most Americans don't understand that they're a working class and that there are people who generate most of their revenue, most of their net worth off of capital accumulation. But the overwhelming majority of Americans, and the 99%, as Bernie likes to call it, they don't do that.
There needs to be a word developed for the. Actually, I don't know when the petit bourgeois. I don't know why that term came into existence, but it describes this like class of people who are so good at selling this concept of class politics, because what it does is it allows Hasan, somebody who at one point maybe still is making 7 figures, 8 figures a year, it allows him to sell himself as being more similar to the firefighter making 50K a year than to the small business owner who's part of the capital evil owning class who might make 90 to 150K a year. The 90 to 150K a year, because they're a capital owner, is the enemy and in the oppositional class to somebody like Hasan, who's just a poor laborer, working man, part of the proletariat, who's making millions and millions of dollars a year. It's it's an inversion of everything you know to be true socially, but it's because it's using an old framework of analysis. This stupid Marxist, like, capital owner versus capital worker person. Ugh.
They get a regular wage. They're not business owners. Or even if they're business owners, they oftentimes operate their own business. So, like, the overwhelming amount of money that they're making, that they're putting in their pocket, is coming from their own labor. And they don't identify with that at all. They're hopped up on American exceptionalism, American individualism. So my goal is to instill class consciousness in people and help them identify what would be more, help them identify who is actually causing harm to them. And in my assessment, it's the billionaires and the corporations who actually control the levers of power in this country.
Has he answered the question?
Yeah, make people have class consciousness.
Okay.
And not the vulnerable populations, the marginalized communities that the Republicans very effectively take people's frustrations and redirect them toward, right? It's not a trans person or a Guatemalan migrant that's like raising your rent. It's your landlord. It's not a trans person or a Mexican undocumented immigrant that's working in a field that is responsible for why your grocery prices are going up. That's greedflation.
Whoever does the audio for this show, when the other person is responding, you have to have the mic hot. I don't know why they do this. Oh my God.
And corporate consolidation, that's at the heart of that issue.
And when you think about your own show and your own audience, like, what do you think actually changes people's minds? Like, what has worked for you?
I mean, talking to them and explaining to them exactly what I'm explaining right now, which is that, I had this conversation with Theo Vaughn where I felt like, a light switch came on in his mind when we were having this back and forth. When I said exactly this thing about, it's not a trans person that's like hurting you at all, but isn't it weird that the Republicans are constantly angling it in that direction and never really talking about big corporations and big pharma and that direction you at all, but isn't it weird that the Republicans are constantly angling it in that direction and never really talking about big corporations and big pharma and all of these capital owners, all these very powerful people.
his politics are so old too. He made the same mistake when he was debating Charlie Kirk. The populist Republicans have moved off of this like ultra pro corporate platform like in 2016. But okay,
people that basically run the show in an almost bipartisan manner. And when I have that conversation with a lot of regular Americans, ordinary Americans that haven't put a lot of thought into it, they go, "Wait a minute, that does kind of make sense."
Yeah.
I feel like that's not only do I think that that's true, but I also feel like it's a very effective way to try to unlock people's class conscious.
Yeah. And sort of build coalitions of
Yeah.
people who are different. You have over 3 million followers on Twitch, 1.75 million on YouTube. I saw that you've done something like 20,000 hours of live streaming
Yeah.
that is all off-the-cuff political takes and responding to viewers in real time, which I imagine must be like constantly fighting with people in your mentions real time.
Yes. No, exactly.
I mean, so like
yes, the Twitch chat, one of the most heavily moderated against Twitch chats in the entirety of the internet, is just like fighting through your Twitter mentions. Good one. Good, true. So true. Jesus. It's like watching a bunch of retarded children stumble through a forest with a blindfold on. It's insane to me that people get paid to do this. Oh my God.
I am not surprised that you've said some stupid and offensive things.
Oh, they're just stupid and offensive. It's not ideologically bad. It was just stupid and offensive. Oh, now we get to do this segment. So why don't you go ahead
would
and
be a
sane wash?
same-side one.
Yeah, why don't you go ahead and sane wash every single thing you've said because it was just edgy and out of context. LOL.
I'm even less surprised that you've said stuff that sounds even worse when it's clipped out of context.
Oh, slop.
Here's what I'm wondering. As you've grown your audience and influence, and as you've gotten more directly involved in electoral politics, do you feel a responsibility to choose your words more carefully, or at least in ways that are less likely to be misconstrued?
Yes and no. So yes, because obviously I don't want to cause any harm to any of the candidates that I'm associating with or this movement that I am obviously a part of. What I like to call the left flank candidates or the Bernie-crats.
Yeah.
People who are more responsive to the needs of the working class folks all around the country. I don't want to ever be a burden to them, because being associated with them is not beneficial for me. The way that DC media...
Oh my God. Not beneficial for me to mention about how I'm on my bed texting my best friend Zoran every single day, but it's not beneficial for me. Jesus Christ. Didn't he just say earlier in this podcast that it's more beneficial for like these guys to come onto his podcast than for him to go to their rallies and shit too? Like, oh my God, I don't know.
Perceives the situation as like, oh my God, he went out to stump for Abdul. All of a sudden, he's like a legitimate political force. I'm like, I
am a legitimate political force. I'm helping this guy.
Doing that already. Like, I was infinitely more effective sitting at home and just talking shit.
Yeah.
Right. Than I am sitting in front of a live audience with like 600 people. Although that's still good. And I enjoy it personally. But like, and I do that for candidates that I trust, candidates that I want to endorse and fight for. But I'm already fundraising for a lot of these folks. Right. Small dollar donations from all around the country.
Who? When? When? What?
He's probably talking about Progressive Victory now.
When? Yeah, that they barely raised any money for with like 20,000 people involved. When is he fundraising for these people? What?
I keep flooding into all the campaigns
Flooding.
that I work with.
They're flooding
but-
in.
Yeah, I am cognizant of that. On the other hand, one thing that I'm thinking about is, well, this medium lends itself so perfectly to being clipped out of context. And I think we are now in a media environment where that doesn't matter as much. I mean, Donald Trump's the president, right? Like, he is the president. It's not just his words that are messed up, that galvanize some of the most reactionary forces in this country and normalize some of the most heinous, most toxic, repulsive types of politics. I mean, he campaigned on saying Haitians are eating cats and dogs. Like, that's unbelievable. That's white supremacy through and through. And he won. So on the one hand, I think that we are now existing in a very different media environment than the one that like MS Now, New York Times, and CNN want to exist in. I think that kind of stuff is over. Like, you're a vulgar person as an independent content creator. I think most people don't care about that. Most people care about like who you are and what your values are and what you represent. And I've been able to withstand these kinds of smear campaigns on even the independent side far before I ever drew the ire of RNC research department. So, and as a matter of fact, they're using a lot of the same clips that I've had to deal with that are circulating on the internet anyway. So it's not, it doesn't bother me that much. It doesn't do anything to my audience. My audience knows what I stand for. They're listening to me for 8 hours a day. They know exactly what my values are. I'm sure it might stop some people or maybe cause them to second guess whether or not they want to be charitable to what I have to say. And that's a problem. But at the end of the day, most people that see that stuff go, wait a minute, I have the capacity to, I have free will. I have the capacity to think critically. What's going on here? Why is the Republican Party saying this, claiming that this guy is racist or claiming that this guy is a misogynist when I know what the Republican Party stands for? Let me go check him out. And I think a lot of people do that and then they check me out and then they realize, oh, they were just lying. Like that's that simple.
And I have experienced this myself and have thought about it over the last couple of weeks because I'm like, if I did not know you, if I hadn't interviewed you before, if I hadn't
wasn't personally friends with you,
familiarized
touching your dick
myself
every day,
with your
while we
content, which I
sit
came
in a
to
circle
probably
and jerk
later than
ourselves
most.
off over about how enlightened we
I
are.
just read the coverage of the last couple of weeks, I would be like, oh yeah, he's a fucking asshole.
Yeah. To be fair, I am an asshole.
But you're an asshole, and I think in different ways than you are being portrayed.
Yeah. I'm an asshole to bullies. Like, I bully bullies. I'm an asshole to reactionaries across the board. I'm an asshole to Nazis.
Oh my God, bro. This is like what's your biggest weakness in an interview? And it's like, my biggest weakness is that I care too much and I try too hard. Like, what's your biggest flaw? I'm a big asshole to people.
To bullies.
That are bullies.
It doesn't matter to me. If you're right wing, if you're a Nazi, if you're a reactionary, I'm not going to be nice to you. And I don't think we should be nice to them.
This is like a living, am I the asshole thread? It's like, today I punched a 7-year-old and am I an asshole? And then the thread is like, so I was at the park and I saw a 7-year-old psychopath with a lighter in his hand and a whole bunch of 3-year-olds that were tied to the ground who were all doused with kerosene. And the 7-year-old was running over to light all of them on fire. And the only way that I could stop him from my wheelchair was to punch him as he ran by me. Am I the asshole for doing this? My God.
They're not nice to us. They're not nice to random uninitiated people. They're not nice to the entire swaths of the population. So yeah, if that's your ideology, if that's your worldview, I find that to be very damaging. I find that to be very toxic. I find that to be violent and dangerous. I'm going to fight back.
Hurting us.
I'm going to use some mean words every now and then.
What? Yeah. Mean word. Not the mean words.
Well, and it's less the mean words, right? Because, like, at least for me, because I was looking through the hit list, which I want to get into here.
All right.
Or at least some of them. Because there's some where I'm like, that was clearly taken out of context, whatever. There's some where I think, like, the underlying point is still worth debating or talking about.
Mm-hmm.
So the one I've seen just about everywhere is, I think this is the most common one, is your comment that America deserved 9/11.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Which you walked back in 2019 by calling it inappropriate, a poor attempt at satire, and said that you meant America the government, not Americans as people.
Of course.
But do you still think that America as a country deserved 9/11? Because saying America or any country deserved to be attacked, to me, is different than saying you understand why they were attacked and what actions might have contributed to that attack. Like, I get the blowback argument, but that is different than deserved is like a more of a normative kind of.
Yeah, that was me responding to Daniel Crenshaw, ironically enough, on the Joe Rogan Experience, where he was making this ridiculous argument that, like, we have to go out and fight these people all the time because they hate us because they ain't us. And I was like, that's insane. That's not the reason. Like, and this was actually echoed by Robert Kagan, one of the godfathers of neoconservatism, just last week, where he came out and was like, yeah, actually, we have been messing around in the Middle East for, upwards of 60 years. And that's precisely the reason why 9/11 happened. And that's precisely the reason why these guys say death to America and Iran, for example. So, like, that was exactly the same sentiment that I've addressed a million times over. But of course, in this moment, it was a heated response, an impassioned response. And people will consistently use that against me over and over again. Some people hear that and they think, I understand exactly what's going on here. Some people hear that and go, how heinous. Oh, my stars and garters. I am clutching my pearls. I don't even want to learn what this is about. I don't want to understand what he's saying. His name is Hasan. He must be Al-Qaeda. I mean, and that's fine.
You also can, like,
He didn't answer
bring
the
it to the
question, by the
present.
way.
Yeah, no shit. He's not going to. Remember, for the same team. Lots of yes and, lots of layup questions, essentially zero disagreement on substance or rhetoric. The goal here is to essentially spread the talking points for everyone else to carry forward. There's going to be no follow-ups. There'll be no anything. It's literally the goal of every question is just to give Hasan the ability to kind of whitewash or sandwash his platform. That's it. So it'll be like a question so that you can kind of do your PR marketing advertising, and then they move on to the next thing, and that's it.
Yep.
I have a very real fear right now that because of what Donald Trump has done in Iran, he has increased the risk of terror attacks on Americans abroad and maybe even here. And God forbid one of those happens, we will know that it could be a result of, or at least Donald Trump will have contributed to that.
It will 100% be a direct byproduct of everything that we've done. It's like impossible not to recognize it at this point.
Yeah, and it's very easy at that point for me to say, oh, now we know what led to that versus, yeah, you know what, we deserved it. Like, I wouldn't say that.
Yeah.
But I would say, like, I understand.
Civilians don't deserve to die. I mean, I'm anti-civilian murder. I'm anti-civilian death.
That down.
That's like one of my first principles is that I'm anti-imperialist. I'm anti-war for that reason.
I wonder who, when he says anti-civilian death, are there any Israeli civilians? I feel like he's using that word pretty intentionally there, but the host will never call him out on that, but that's okay.
Because I don't want civilians to die. I don't want random people to die. I don't even want people to go out and die in the process of trying to kill people.
I want to stay in the theme of violence just for a minute because I think it connects to another comment of yours that's been circulating. This is one from January. Hamas is 1,000 times better than the fascist settler colonial apartheid state of Israel.
I stand by that.
Well, so I will
okay. Well, so not out of context. Okay.
say this is the one that bothered me most when I first heard it.
What?
He's about to run interference for him.
He is. Like. He just said it. This is the one that bothered me the most when I first heard it. That's what he just, okay, here we go.
From January, Hamas is 1,000 times better than a fascist settler colonial apartheid state.
I stand by that.
Well, so I will say this is the one that bothered me most when I first heard it. And I remember having a reaction to it when I first saw it in January. Because I think even if you believe what happened in Gaza is genocide and what's happening in the West Bank is apartheid, those are different claims from Hamas is 1,000 times better. Because, like, Hamas is an organization that has massacred, raped, kidnapped civilians on October 7th. They've also been catastrophic for Palestinians by almost every measure. Governance, corruption, they made choices they knew would result in mass civilian death of their own people. So my question is, when you say Hamas is 1,000 times better, do you actually mean that? Or is that a rhetorical move or like a soft...
Oh my God, the amount of workshopping is shameless. Holy...
solidarity signal? Like what?
I mean, it's all of the above. I do mean it. I think it's a rhetorical move because it frustrates a lot of people. I've also said I'm a harm reduction voter. I'm a lesser evil voter, and therefore I would vote for Hamas over Israel every single time.
Wait, is this true? Hold on. Hasan's dad bragging about how he made most of his money landlording and raising rents? No.
You didn't see this yet?
School.
No.
And he was in New Jersey. He was in real estate.
So from your hometown of Kilis, that little town, he happens to be in New Jersey as well.
Yes.
He's in real estate, and he talks you into this thing?
Yeah, Coldwell Banker. He was working for a Coldwell Banker. And he said, there is this office building, 50,000 square feet in middle Eatontown, and it's really cheap, dirt cheap, and we can buy it. It's no time we can make a lot of money. So
Did that turn out to be true?
No.
Shocking. It turns out it was hard to get rich quick.
That's 50,000 square feet building, only 1/3 is rented, and they were paying unbelievably low. The total gross income of the monthly income of the building was about $5,000. Expenses of building was about $20,000 a month.
So you're losing $15,000 a month on top of what you paid for the building?
Yes.
Okay. Did you get in a fight with your friend?
No, it was too late because I was in the middle of it.
So you didn't know what you were getting yourself into?
No.
Here we go again. You didn't know what you were getting yourself into when you start the manufacturing business, now this. So how'd you get out of this hole?
I have one thing that I will tell every single kid, disadvantaged families and everybody, you never give up. You work until all the barriers are open. I realized after I bought the building, I came in and I made a little office for myself, and I look at all the leases. My God, this is really terrible. This is going to kill all my money. Everything will be gone and I will be in trouble. I will go bankrupt. I start to read all the leases, which I never read the lease before. And every day I start to come 7:30, 8 o'clock until 6, 7 o'clock. Saturday
Whoa!
included.
He said the meme.
One of the leases was for one of the biggest tenant, which was a private school, okay? In that lease, there was a clause. It says, if this building is sold, the new owner can renegotiate the lease. That is something unusual. That's beautiful. Is it true? I took to one of the lawyers, said, yeah, that's right. So I wrote a letter to the people. They were occupying almost 25-30% of the building, and they were paying something like $3,400 a month. It's impossible. I wrote them a letter and said, that's it. Either you get out of the building, which is a big risk because if they get out, I'm in trouble. I'm finished. Or I'm increasing your monthly rent to that time around $6,800 or something like that, maybe almost twice as much. He said, you are crazy. I said, okay, it's your turn. You do it. He took me to court.
Okay, this is a high stakes poker for you.
Yeah.
Because if they leave, you're in a world of hurt.
No, they couldn't leave because they have laboratories and this and that.
Wow. No wonder Dan hates Hasan so much, because Hasan's dad outdid him. Okay, sorry. Anyway, back to the landlord hater.
Because I'm looking at the situation as a paramilitary organization that has like a political party that frustrates a lot of people. I've also said I'm a harm reduction voter. I'm a lesser evil voter, and therefore I would.
Oh my God! No, he's not. Wait, he says now he's a lesser evil voter. How many times he said I would never vote for the lesser evil? Oh.
Well, did you not catch this on the first one? He literally says here he'd vote for Hamas over Israel.
Wait, did I miss that? Hold on.
Mass civilian deaths of their own people. So my question is, when
Oh,
you
sorry. That last guy was Hasan's grandpa, not his dad.
say Hamas is 1,000 times better, do you actually mean that? Or is that a rhetorical move or like a solidarity signal? Like what?
I mean, it's all of the above. I do mean it. I think it's a rhetorical move because it frustrates a lot of people. I've also said I'm a harm reduction voter. I'm a lesser evil voter, and therefore I would vote for Hamas over Israel every single time.
How is it that you can vote for Hamas over Israel, but you can't vote for Kamala over Donald Trump? What? That is a crazy statement. Okay, I'm glad that Hasan said that, because I'm sure we're going to spend the next 15 minutes interrogating that statement, right? There's no way that that's just going to sail over this retard's head and he's not going to address it at all, right? There's no way, right?
I do mean it. I think it's a rhetorical move because it frustrates a lot of people. I've also said I'm a harm reduction voter. I'm a lesser evil voter, and therefore I would vote for Hamas over Israel every single time, because I'm looking at the situation as a paramilitary organization that has like a political party as well, a Politburo as well, that is entirely comprised not as an alien force, but of orphaned children that have, had their parents killed by an apartheid state that has been dominating the lives of Palestinians for 80 years at this point. And they've done a genocide at this point as well, but like it started off with the Nakba and has only evolved as technology has gotten better to become more heinous. And Gaza is this hermetically sealed area that many people correctly point to as the world's largest open-air prison before October 7th. So my perspective on this has always been that I think that Hamas's tactics, which I oppose at times, right, or it's like internal governance issues, are secondary to this conversation, because it's like placing a lot of emphasis on the Nat Turner rebellion, or instead of talking about the much larger, much more consequential, much bigger harm that chattel slavery was to black people, to like sell black people and to rape them and treat them as though they weren't human. I think that's a far larger systemic force that is going to make the Nat Turner rebellion look inconsequential in comparison to the greater harm.
Weird analogy? No, it's the one that Finkelstein uses all the time. That's why he uses it.
Same with, for example, the ANC. The ANC had a militant wing called the MK. I'm not going to try to even attempt to say it. And, no.
This comparing of the ANC in South Africa to Hamas is just it's such a loser white, Western, retarded, like historically illiterate comparison. It's so stupid.
Nelson Mandela went to prison and was imprisoned by the apartheid state. And MK and the ANC did a lot of stuff to collaborators, the collaborators that have worked alongside the apartheid administration.
He's saying so little with so many words. He needs somebody to translate his babble into meaningful words. No. This is good. This is what the people want to hear. You're giving them. This is like reality TV slop, but for politics. So if you like it, you like it.
They had a practice called necklacing, where they would put a tire around the necks of collaborators and light it on fire. It was a heinous practice. And it was, of course, condemned after the fact, but none of the people that were engaged in it, if I recall correctly, even in the Truth and Reconciliation Committee, were actually legally charged for it. because there's this understanding when we look back at like some of the more heinous things that resistance groups have done and militancies have done. We match that up against the far larger, far broader systematic violence that an entire people have been subjected to, and it makes me feel silly to consistently talk about what Hamas has done, especially when there has been an October 7 times 1,000, if not more than 1,000 at this point, in the hands of Israel against the Palestinian population in its entirety. I mean, they're doing an October 7 to Lebanon right now as we speak.
Just take it from the Palestinian perspective. Don't you think Hamas's decision to attack on October 7th and to massacre civilians on October 7th was a catastrophic mistake for them, for the Palestinian people? Like, do you think the Palestinian people are...
And then he moves to strategy. And so Hasan just got to say all of that completely and totally unobstructed. And now it's like, okay, well, like, but strategically speaking, wasn't like mass murdering civilians, like, it didn't work out strategically,
done
right?
better?
Yeah. Couldn't they have like, couldn't they have,
little?
Oh my God, dude.
in any way better off than they were before October 7th?
No, of course not. But at the end of the
So
day,
that's why I'm asking.
I mean,
more.
but at
It's
the
more
end
for
of
me
the
like a resistance movements wherever they are need to come up with strategies.
Yeah.
Right.
This is
And
disgusting. This is
I think-
disgusting.
Bro, we're cooked, dude.
was a bomb
We're
speechwriter.
cooked. Yeah, no, it's just, this is why I guess the extremists took over the right. Maybe this is what we're just due for now on our end. It's just retarded. This guy is like a retard. I don't understand how these guys ever did anything in politics. Or maybe politics isn't real. Maybe it's all just a game where retarded like this get nepoed in and are lucky to get jobs for whatever people, and they just do this shit all day, and they just have no, or maybe they support it secretly. Maybe he is like far more radical or whatever. I can't tell. I don't know. It's just what a waste of time.
I guess my view is, and I understand that there is a huge power imbalance here, but I think that resistance movements that engage in, mass slaughter or civilian targeting and all that, like, they just have
We're
less
still calling them
success.
resistance movements. These are terrorists.
Yeah. It's what is. It is what is.
Than resistance movements that are nonviolent. I mean, it's obviously in history. I know we've had a revolution here. I get it.
I wouldn't agree
I
with
get
that
armed
one.
revolution. Yeah,
But yeah.
But I do think if you look back,
Remember in the Revolutionary War when U.S. soldiers invaded British towns and rounded up all their civilians and shot and killed them and I remember these. Remember the great stories of you can't say the rapes because Hasan doesn't believe any of those happened, I guess. So.
for the last 100 years, nonviolent movements have been more successful than armed resistance movements. That's just.
I think they
that's
work
just
hand in
scholarship.
hand, but I think it might have been Kwame Ture who said it. You can only shame someone who has a conscience, and if your enemy has none, it's impossible to get them to react to your civil movement, because the Palestinians have tried civil movements. I mean, the Great March of Return, where hundreds of Palestinians were sniped directly by the Israeli occupation forces, and they openly celebrated that too. They said we have an accounting of every single bullet that we shot at the Palestinians, and then they had to delete that. I mean, this is just the tip of the iceberg as far as the war crimes galore that we're talking about, because even the everyday maintenance of apartheid, which Israel is.
He was right. This was our king, but it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. He was our king. God, this guy. Ah!
For some reason, the intelligentsia of the Democratic Party, with 2020 hindsight, believes that Joe Biden should have considered not running again because of their perception that he was too old. And so then the drumbeat began. And the New York the New York Times, on a near daily basis, egged on by the Pod Save America saviors of the Democratic Party, with four white millionaires that are dining out on their association with Barack Obama from 16 years ago, living in Beverly Hills, telling the rest of the world what black voters in South Carolina really want, or what the women in the waitress living outside of Green Bay, Wisconsin really believes. I mean, what the I mean, I can't believe that we do this over and over again.
Yeah.
Or I hear Rahm Emanuel is going to run for president. What a David Axelrod's going to run his campaign for him. That's like, oh boy, there's the answer. There's the answer. Genius is all. All the things that they want. You remember this, is that everybody talks about Joe Biden now as if he was somehow the choice of the Democratic Party. Bullshit. We lost Iowa. We lost New Hampshire. We came in second in Nevada. True. Pluff and David Axelrod went on TV. They said that there's no way Joe Biden can get the nomination. Not a chance in the world. Mike Bloomberg is going to crush him in California. Elizabeth Warren's going to beat him in Massachusetts. There's going to get wiped out in Texas. He doesn't have the money to run. A lot of rural voters said, "Fuck you, we love Joe." A lot of urban voters said, "Fuck you, we love Joe," and they voted for him overwhelmingly. And not only that, everybody said, well, he'll never be able to beat Trump. And then they said, well, he'll never bring us out of COVID. And then they said, he'll never be able to pass bipartisan legislation, and he doesn't know what the hell he's talking about, and he's living in a different generation, and he's living in a past time. And over again, David Axelrod would go on and say, you know, the thing about the president is that he is just a man who time has passed by, and he doesn't understand Congress. We passed bipartisan legislation more than any presidents in Lyndon Baines Johnson, and who had a supermajority in both the House and the Senate, with Joe Manchin and Kristen Sinema. And who did that? That didn't happen by magic. That didn't happen in the Obama administration. That happened because Joe Biden got on the phone with Kristen Sinema and Joe Manchin and Chuck Schumer and the rest of the party and Republicans in the party, and he passed a bill because Mitch McConnell didn't stand in the way like he did to every other president other than Joe Biden. And he got it done. He did it. Him alone. And then they said, well, look, it's all going to come down to this State of the Union speech. Going to come down to the State of the Union speech. And he knocks it out of the park.
And it was that one debate that caused the full backslide.
Yeah, and I'll tell you what, I know exactly what happened in that debate. He flew around the world, basically.
He was
He was too good of a man.
He was.
Is an incredibly violent endeavor. That maintenance requires you to constantly be a military force that is ever present, that is dominating and ritualistically humiliating and subjugating millions of people. So my perspective is always looking at this from the perspective of the people that are being dominated, rather than placing a lot of the emphasis on structural violence, or rather on state-backed violence, which we have a predisposition to lean into no matter what. Someone fights back against a cop, the automatic suspicion is, well, the police are actually maintaining law and order, so it must be a criminal, right? That might not always be the case. So I like to look at this stuff.
I like how Hasan's politics, like half the takes he gives are like, it feels like a Disney Channel original movie. Like the two kids stumble onto a site and a cop is like attacking somebody, and it's like, oh wow, like the cop is hitting somebody. It must be a bad guy. And then it's like, what? The cop is the cop is the bad one. What? Like really? Like in the year after we just watched two white Americans get assassinated by ICE cops, it's like, well, the cops can be bad. You're blowing my mind here, bro. Like, we've had like 20 years of America bad, military bad, cops bad. We had the whole BLM riots. Like, wow, thank you for the 2016 commentary, bro. I feel like I'm in a fucking Starman skid. Jesus.
With a more open-minded framework where I can try to figure out exactly what led to
we're trying to figure out what led to it. And it was the bang pigs of Israel. Thank you. Thank you.
A day like October 7 that was unbelievably violent, right? And I think it's pretty clear that 75 years at that point of ethnic cleansing and apartheid and subjugation was
too much. They couldn't bear it.
A big part of the driving force. And as far as Hamas goes, we oftentimes talk about just Hamas. It's almost like a catch-all term. Hamas is only one component of the Palestinian resistance. The Al-Aqsa flood was actually conducted not only by Hamas, but Palestinian Islamic Jihad's own militant forces, PFL.
That largely work with and are subsumed by Hamas, but okay.
DFLP, and numerous...
The DFLP and the PFLP, are these guys even players in the Gaza Strip anymore? These guys were like barely relevant like 40 years ago. How big is the DFLP and the PFLP in Gaza? Because I'm pretty sure PIJ, Palestinian Islamic Jihad, are the they're the Al-Quds brigades, and then for Hamas it's the Al-Qassam brigades. Also, anybody that calls it Al-Aqsa flood is a lunatic. They're an anti-Western lunatic every time, but okay.
But Palestinian Islamic Jihad's own militant forces, PFLP, DFLP, and numerous other, even including Fatah militias as well, that still existed in Gaza. So this was a military operation initially that was conducted by virtually every...
I know that this is a pro-Pali talking point, but I've never understood why or how. I don't understand why or how this is a pro-Pali talking point. They always like to point out, that it wasn't just Hamas, right? That there were a bunch of civilian Palestinians and everything else too. And at first, when that dog whistle came out, I thought that the point was to say that it was like randoms in Palestine that did it. It wasn't like the Hamas... it wasn't actually Hamas. It was like just random terrorists, but it always sounded worse to me. Like, oh, so you're saying it wasn't the government that was murdering and raping civilians. It was just random civilians from the Gaza Strip. That's even worse. I don't understand, man.
Single active organization inside of Gaza. So it's not, that's why I always say, like, Hamas is not an alien entity in the way that we think about them, or we say, oh, they're these like evil oppressors of the Palestinian people. Are there disagreements within the Palestinian coalition against Hamas's governance? Absolutely.
What the
no people are a monolith. But the only thing that every single Palestinian, with the exception of those who work for like the Atlantic Council or whatever, that are there to just, do regime propaganda, do Israel propaganda, with the exception of those people, every Palestinian I've ever talked to, Christian Palestinians, who might even have major disagreements with Hamas, who might even be critical of Hamas, will always say the number one thing that we want is the end to the occupation, is the end to the apartheid. The number one thing we want is dignity and sovereignty. And that is what Hamas has been trying to achieve militarily.
The message
Bro, this is just like, this is crazy terrorist apologia. Also, by the way, anybody that in my opinion, I don't know if there are other people that I haven't read or scholars that I'm just not aware of, referring to the Palestinian people as a unified people and not making the differentiation between the Gaza Strip, which is governed by Hamas, and then the West Bank, which the Palestinian parts are governed by the Palestinian Authority and the PLO. These are two different entities, and to talk about them as having like a unified approach or theory or unified criticisms is, I don't know. I've never heard an educated person speak about it like that, but I don't know. I don't know why I'm giving Hasan credit, actually. It's because retarded, but so is the guy talking to him, so whatever.
That is what Hamas has been trying to achieve militarily.
The message that you just said, that Palestinians end to the occupation, dignity, self-determination.
Yeah.
For people who are not as familiar with the issue as you, but that you want to reach and that you want to, because I assume the purpose here is to build a movement that supports Palestinian self-determination. And if I was someone who didn't know a lot about it,
here would be a good question if you actually gave a fuck about any of this. Why not just ask, okay, so I understand the perspective from the Palestinian side, because I don't know why the fuck I'm wasting my time hedging here when half you retards, and I'm talking to you, DGG, aren't going to hear this anyway, and are going to come 2 years later saying I've always had crazy, unhinged opinions about whatever, because you're literally brain broken on this stupid region of the planet, okay? An interesting question would be, because not technically, there is a Palestinian perspective that is worth considering. There is a Palestinian perspective. It's worth asking why, Israelis like to say, well, they voted for Hamas, so this is what they get. Well, why did they vote for Hamas? What actually happened there that made them vote for Hamas? What was going on that they were like, why do we have to vote? That's an interesting question to ask, and it's good to interrogate why that happened. But the real question is, for the pro-Pally sloppers, is to say, oh, okay, interesting, you're giving me all the Palestinian perspective. What's the Israeli perspective on this? Why do you think Israelis feel the way that they do about Palestinians, about Lebanon and Hezbollah, about all the surrounding region and their attitude to them? What do you think is causing that? You never, ever, 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 ever hear these sloppers ask this question. You never hear it. You never, ever hear it.
Assume the purpose here is to build a movement that supports Palestinian self-determination. And if I was someone who didn't know a lot about it, and I knew that Hamas committed October 7th, and then I heard a message that Hamas is better than Israel, I would be less receptive to the person delivering that message than I would someone saying, look what Israel has done and what the Palestinian people...
These are layups. These are layups. You understand these are layups, right? I should explain, I should explain how to... I don't know if people understand what a layup is. Okay. Let's imagine a scenario where I see a black person in my front yard. It's 7 p.m. and I get my shotgun from my home and I go out, I trade a few words with a dude and I shoot and I kill him, okay? And then let's say that I'm the news for it. On a critical show, on an adversarial hostile hosting, it's going to be, are you racist? Why did you assume he was stealing from you? What did you say to him beforehand? Were there racial slurs exchanged? Why, you've got a history of saying A, B, C, D, and now you've killed a black person, right? On a slopper show like this, right, what a layup question is a layup question. What a layup question allows you to do is the layup question will take a scenario and then it will pose the most low IQ opposition to your action, and then it will give you a chance to answer the lowest IQ criticism with the most eloquent answer available to you in order for you to lie and say that you've addressed the opposition. That's what the layup question is. So a layup question for that scenario would be, a guy would be on a show with me and be saying, so Destiny, so let's be fair. You always say something like this. You always start off with these things. Let's be fair, okay? There are going to be people that see that that you shot and killed a man who was in your front yard. Now, a lot of us, we might be scared. We see people, out late at night, and I know there have been burglaries in your area, and I think you've even had a history of people breaking into your home before, sure. But for the people that say, I think Destiny just wanted to murder a random black person for no reason whatsoever. You know, like if I were to see that you shot at a guy who in the police report you say he was trying to break in your house, you know, I could see why some people would be critical of that. So why don't you go ahead and address that criticism? And it's like, oh, let me clean my cum up first. And it's like, Jesus, like it's such these are layup questions. Oh God.
Message that I heard a message that Hamas is better than Israel. I would be less receptive to the person delivering that message than I would someone saying, look what Israel has done and what the Palestinian people really want, aside from this organization that is serving them poorly, is most Palestinians just want dignity and they want an end to the oppression. Like, I would feel like, okay, I could get behind that and I'm going to be more attracted to that.
Like, keep in mind the framing. Like, what are the... I'm sorry, he didn't even ask me. He gave him a layup and then he answered the layup with his own... Insane washing. Oh!
That mess.
I have a policy of saying the truth unconditionally and standing by my principles, even if that's sometimes hard to hear.
Oh, he's so brave. Oh my God, he's so brave. Holy shit. He's so brave. Oh my God. Wow, I'm crying for how brave he is.
Standing by my principles, even if that's sometimes hard to hear. And that's precisely what I did after October 7 on October 8 when I went live and talked about the systematic forces that have led to October 7. And a lot of people were not receptive to that message at all. And some of which actually became haters of mine and left the community, where I lost a third of my entire community for like the...
What? He's skinwalking me when I chopped off a third of my community to the crazy commies that ended up becoming Hasan's initial seeded fans and Bosher's fans. He's skinwalking me. What the fuck?
Left the community, where I lost a third of my entire community for like the first year of Israel's maximum violence, Israel's genocide, where people simply did not want to hear that message at all. But I know, and I knew back then, that as long as I say the truth, that one, history will vindicate me, and two, as long as I say the truth, there will always be people who are more charitable and more receptive to that regardless. Because I see no reason in sheltering people from that perspective. Do I obviously manage in a much longer format, in a much longer conversation like the one that we're having? Yes, I am obviously more capable of explaining that position. But I think saying what I said there, that Hamas is 1,000 times better than Israel, cuts across that narrative in a way that I think even liberals have to think about, because someone who is immediately reactive to that kind of sentiment that goes, wait a minute, but Israel is a liberal democracy. It's the only democracy in the region. Why is he saying that? They understand at least one part of it, where they think, okay, he's saying, Hamas killed 1,200 people. A third of them were soldiers. A third of them were,
On the talking points! It doesn't matter that Hamas killed soldier. Oh, I know what he's going to say next, by the way. The next talking point is, we don't know how many, but a lot of people were probably killed by Israeli choppers. I don't know if he'll say Hannibal Doctrine, but that's the next talking point. But it doesn't matter if you kill soldiers or not. If you are invading a country and you're killing them when you're not actively at war with each other, it's a war crime. It's considered, I don't know if they're war crimes. You can't kill soldiers when you're not at war with each other. That doesn't count as like military valid targets or whatever. Let's see if he gives the Israeli choppers were killing Jewish civilians in order to prevent capture, like the Hannibal Doctrine.
A third of them were soldiers. A third of them were, military people who were like, active duty.
2/3 were military targets on October 7th. It was mainly the military. Give me, please. I'm about to come the biggest load of my life. Please, God. Please, God. Please, God. Please, God. Hannibal Doctrine. Please, God. Please, God. Please, God. Israeli choppers, Hannibal Doctrine. Please, God.
In the military, and then civilians as well. Israel has done that, 1,000-fold to the Palestinians. So I think, like, even in the most...
I was edged right to the limit. He didn't do it.
Reductive ways, even in the most reductive ways to try to comprehend what I'm saying there, people can understand that. Like, I think people are not stupid. We assume that they're stupid.
I will tell you. Well, I'll tell you how it landed with me, because I was
2/3 of the people killed on October 7th were valid military targets, I guess, according to Hasan there. Nice.
It's like, it wasn't like, oh wait, why did he say that? Israel's some great. I was like, Israel has committed just horrific atrocity. Like what I have moved so far on. But I'm like, Hamas is they're what did they do? Like October 7th was catastrophic for them. It was also like we've
Catastrophic strategically? Bruh, we're cooked. It was, which is funny, but that's just crazy, bro.
all seen the images, like kids and people, and a lot of like these are like leftist peaceniks, Israelis at a concert, and they massacred them. And I'm like, these people are like, I just want to have, and I do think it's important in politics to have like universal principles, right? Which is like if
Hold on, before I permaban you for being a fucking retard. Destiny, I think Hamas did not declare war as a weak point. The reason declarations of war are required by international law is that we don't want misattribution of blame, i.e. false flags or whatever. I don't think October 7th would be a war crime if they only targeted the military. You're dead wrong. If you were to do a surprise attack on a country that you do not have, that you're not at war with, I don't know if you need a declaration of war. I don't know if any international standards call that out, but you're not actually at war with, that it's supposed to be considered war crimes. So if we think that Iran has a military base with 100 aircraft and 1,000 pilots, and we're not at war with Iran, and we bomb that airbase, that's a terrorist attack. It's considered a terrorist attack. You can't just, even if they're military people, you can't just kill them and blow them up in peacetime when you're not warring with a state and call it, oh, it's a valid military action. It's not true.
Violence is always wrong. Civilian violence is always wrong. Targeting children and women, always wrong, no matter which side does it, right? And I do think that it's important, not just from a moral perspective, but from like a building a political coalition perspective, to say, if I think one thing is wrong, one action is wrong on this side, then it also has to be wrong on the other side. Even if there is an obvious power imbalance, and even if there is a history.
But we don't always do that, is my point.
Oh, I know.
We don't do that when the dust is settled. We don't do that when the historic forces have played itself out and we look back at it. And I don't see a reason not to apply that same interpretation, because I see the civilians on both sides as human beings worthy of dignity.
Really?
And I think a lot of people don't realize that they do have a little bit of an implicit bias where we've been trained as Americans living here during the global war on terror to collateralize one side and to see the other side as like a European style country that's under attack. So we have the capacity to see the violence that Israelis are subjected to as like...
Destiny, that's definitely not true. What is a surprise attack? You need to declare it was you that bombed them retrospectively, but you do not need to have previously stated the attack was about to happen. Could you cite the international law you are appealing to? First of all, a surprise attack is something that happens in the during active conflict. Okay, number one. Number two, you can't, if you start a war with a surprise attack, but you're not like at active, you're not in active hostilities with each other. That's not considered like a surprise attack, military. You're at war, whatever. It should be considered a war crime. This is why the U.S. attacks on the Venezuelan boats, even if those were military people, they weren't, would still be considered a war crime. Give me a moment and I'll find the IHL rule on this. Hold on.
Real human beings, maybe even your neighbor dying in the hands of scary brown people, as opposed to Palestinians that die, entire city blocks reduced to rubble, is something that we've seen so many times on the TV, whether it be the Syrian civil war, whether it be, Iraq, Afghanistan. So we automatically collateralize the lives of those Palestinians. So that's part of the reason
why. And I will say that those images are, I think, the most like that is what personally has moved me. The most is seeing those images. Like I remember, like in post October 7th, and we talked about it a lot here, and the student protest movement and all the craziness over.
Generally when it comes to defining things for international humanitarian law. So like for instance, I believe that I would have to go back and look. It's been a while. I don't think that there are people that are declared civilians for international humanitarian law. Typically what you have is you have a conflict, and then you have people who are considered party to the conflict, and then people who are considered military targets, and then people who aren't military targets should be considered protected peoples. So typically whenever you're reading language related to international humanitarian law, you're going to see things like armed forces of a party to the conflict. There has to be an ongoing military conflict. There has to be a conflict to speak of here. It can't just be people that are part of a random military that you're not currently in conflict with. But I'll keep reading. I'll find out more specific for you. For
that. And I remember thinking, like, there was that Columbia student who I think was eventually suspended or expelled or whatever for saying, like you're lucky I didn't kill more Zionists and all that.
Yeah.
You know? And I remember thinking to myself, like, someone says something like that, and it's just a reaction that I can't even, like, it's just a human reaction to be like, oh, maybe I don't want to be with these, like, this is bad. I don't want to hear, like, that's, now you want to kill Zionists, or you like, that's crazy. That's hurting your movement. You know?
No, I've been, look, here's.
It's the start of every conflict that isn't declared beforehand a war crime. Yet you're not supposed to surprise start wars. Correct. That's not okay. I can. Me.
Tomorrow.
Wait, somebody linked this 1 year ago.
In a hypothetical scenario that is not so hypothetical, decided that they are going to be the ones that are going to be anti-trans and push anti-trans bills. A lot of you liberals love talking about trans people, and you're like, oh, I guess you just don't care about trans people. Oh, I guess you don't care about immigrants. Remember how many fucking liberals said that in the 2020 election? I guess you don't care about immigrants then, and that's why you want to vote Republican. Not voting is basically voting for the Republicans. Okay, now Democrats are like, we don't give a shit about immigrants. We want to kill them ourselves. And you're like, oh, well, if you don't vote for the Democratic Party, then then Republicans are going to win. Okay, what's the difference? What's the difference? There is no lesser evil between the two parties if the Democratic Party is also pushing for the same evil that
lesser of two evils. I don't understand. I don't get it. I'm sorry. So what we did in Iran is a war crime. So the U.S. opening salvo on Iran was a war crime. Are the USA strikes on Iran war crimes? Yes. Correct. Yes. Ask me about Venezuela next. Yes. Yes. Soleimani? Yes, you're not allowed to assassinate enemy leaders like that. You're not supposed to do that. You can't assassinations to, well, hold on, wait. The only catch to this is if I actually don't know the formal statement between Iran and the United States in terms of if we're considered in conflict with each other. I'll hedge on that. I'm not actually 100% sure on the right now or back then where that was, because it might be because if Iran has some, I don't think they are. I don't think because they always fight with proxy groups. My leaning would be towards no, I don't believe we're considered at conflict with one another. I don't believe so.
Here's the thing. I've been around protest movements my whole professional media career for a very long time. I've been doing this for a decade plus. There's going to be cringe people. There's going to be passionate people that say unhinged things that I totally disagree with.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, this is exactly what happened with Black Lives Matter as well, where, there'd be like there'd be someone that says like, yeah, fry him like bacon. And then the media would laser in on that to disparage the entire movement. So I have a policy of looking at what the actual movement represents. Do I identify with those values? Do I agree with them? Rather than,
I can't read this and listen to him. You can look at something called the Rome Statute. This is the underlining thing that led to the creation of or establishes the International Criminal Court. The International Criminal Court is only to hold individuals accountable. This is a separate thing from the International Court of Justice, which is part of the United Nations, though. People use war crimes as like a catch-all sometimes when they talk about genocide, crimes against humanity, whatever. Technically, war crimes, it's its own article. It's a separate thing. For the purpose of this statute, crime of aggression means the planning, preparation, initiation, or execution by a person in a position effectively to exercise control over or to direct the political or military action of a state of an act of aggression which, by its character, gravity, and scale, constitutes a manifest violation of the Charter of the United Nations. I believe that by this, what they mean is every nation has a right to its own sovereignty, has a right to its borders, its people, its laws. You can't aggress on a nation. Obviously, by bombing them, murdering their people, kidnapping them, or whatever. This would be considered a crime of aggression here. Okay. For the purpose of paragraph 1, act of aggression means use of armed force by a state against the sovereignty, territorial integrity, or political independence of another state, or in any other manner inconsistent with the Charter of the United Nations. Any of the following acts, regardless of a declaration of war, shall, in accordance with the United Nations General Assembly resolution, blah, 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 qualifies an act of aggression. So this says, this is regardless of a declaration of war. The invasion or attack by the armed forces of a state of the territory of another state, or any military occupation, however temporary, resulting from such invasion or attack, or any annexation by the use of force, bombardment by the armed forces of a state, the blockade of the ports or coast of a state, an attack by the armed forces of a state on the land. The reason why they have this is regardless of a declaration of war, is because technically you can have declarations of war that are violative of the UN Charter. You could just say we're declaring war on Mexico because we hate Hispanic people or whatever. But and then when you start bombing them or attacking them, theoretically, they should still be considered crimes of aggression because you have to have a valid casus belli or whatever. Although technically, with the way that the UN defines it, I don't think you can, or the way the ICC or the ICJ defines it, you should never really have a casus belli because it means the other person is violating some kind of UN charter or whatever as well. You can't blockade and attack by the armed forces of the state, bombardment, elements of the crime. I'm trying to think of, it's going to be on the IHL site because normally for your international humanitarian law rules, usually they will cite down here, like a lot of this international humanitarian law stuff is built upon individual court cases or how they're defined in certain military manuals or what the like broad consensus is. And they'll cite down here to different things. I'm trying to think, I remember reading about, because it was a question on October 7th of, can you target military people even if you're not currently in war? Does it count as a war crime? But the overwhelming answer that I saw on this with regards to international humanitarian law was yes, that is considered, I don't know if you call it a war crime or whatever, what the definition is, but it's not, you can't do that. It's not considered like a proper military action.
Key.
Wait, did the U.S. ratify this? International humanitarian law is considered customary, I believe, meaning that these rules develop over practice of all nations over time. So basically, if everybody acts in a certain way where they believe that a thing is true, then that becomes true, and it is. So I think it's referred to customary law or customary international law, which I think is where a lot of these rules develop from. Like a lot of these rules can come from the Geneva Conventions, or it's like additional protocol 1 and 2, I think, are added on to the Geneva Conventions. You see these cited a lot. Some are just practice that have been longstanding practice forever, but it's considered like customary international law is just considered you have to follow these things. So every single rule that's listed on this website, you don't have to ratify anything. It doesn't matter if you ratify a thing or not. Every single nation on the planet is expected to follow all of these rules. And then if you don't, theoretically, you could be held accountable depending on the ICC charges individuals, the ICJ targets countries. But what does those blockading the Strait of Hormuz look like? I have no idea. I don't know what we're doing. I don't even know what we're doing over anymore. I literally have no right. Article 2.4 of the UN Charter governs the question of jus ad bellum, and because the only way to satisfy it are self-defense or a UNSC resolution, there's no way to start a war in a lawful way without committing the crime of aggression. Sure. Okay. Wait, I just want to read it for that guy in chat that asked the question. Hold on. All members shall refrain in their international relations from the threat or use of force against the territorial integrity or political independence of any state or in any other manner inconsistent with the purposes of the United Nations. This is about starting wars. You know what? I should put the positive on you, actually. You. Go through my notes on international law. It's in there somewhere. If you think that you can kill military people who are not currently engaged in armed conflict, then you find me the positive argument for that. War crimes aren't things that make your army retarded. If there is military advantage, we don't outlaw it because then no one would follow the law. You can't attack someone and have them think it was a third party in the hopes they retaliate in error. You can obviously initiate a defensive war with a surprise attack. What? Oh, wait, are you an Israeli? Are you trying to justify the 6-Day War? I don't know. Okay, good luck.
Of looking at what.
Okay, going back.
Or you know what? Like that's crazy. That's hurting your movement. You know?
No, I've been, look, here's the thing. I've been around protest movements my whole professional media career for a very long time. I've been doing this for a decade plus. There's going to be cringe people. There's going to be passionate people that say unhinged things that I totally disagree with.
Yeah. At
the end of the day, this is exactly what happened with Black Lives Matter as well, where, you know, there'd be like there'd be someone that says like, yeah, fry him like bacon. And then the media would laser in on that to disparage the entire movement. So I have a policy of looking at what the actual movement represents. Do I identify with those values? Do I agree with them? Rather than, key offenders that have said something that I consider to be heinous as well, right? And I don't spend a lot of time or put a lot of emphasis on people like that because I've been to these campuses, I've been to these encampments, and they were some of the best organized movements I have ever seen. They had messaging discipline, they had all of the right things, they had protest marshals that would keep everything intact. They refused to talk to the media unless they had someone who was doing communication for the entire encampment that would talk to the media, and they still got brutalized. UCLA is the one I went to. I couldn't believe it. Like these pro-Israel groups were they set up these massive they set up this like massive auditorium, or not an auditorium, I don't know what it's called, but like a projector where they were blasting October 7 footage and calling these student encampment student protesters like heinous words. They threw fireworks into the encampment. They brutalized these students, and these weren't students that were doing.
IHL doesn't seem to care much about war declarations for this. They look at how the attacking party conducted themselves during the attack, targeting civilians. Even 1/3 of the son's mind doesn't sound like good conduct, so he has no point. It is a war crime. Well, but that's not necessarily true, because you could have an attack where 1/3 of the deaths are civilians, but it could still be a justified attack as far as international humanitarian law is concerned. But I'm just saying that military people who are in the military are not targetable in peacetime, and then the excuse is that, well, we're at war, so we can target them. But if you believe the opposite, you need to find me a positive argument for it. I'm not gonna, or you can go dig through my notes, because I'm almost positive that I addressed this exactly somewhere in when I was doing all the international law shit. I just don't remember the exact source for it.
And that these were pro-Israel people that just came from around the area, right? And I couldn't believe what I saw, where like the media's coverage was either both siding it or oftentimes siding with the pro-Israel people. So like for me, again, it's I look at the values and
What the f is he talking about? This is so slop. Dude, I hate politics. It's such a waste of time. Most of the media, I'm pretty sure, was against the Trump admin that were revoking visas and shit that were revoking visas and stuff for students that were criticizing Palestine. The only time the media came up against the protesters is when these slop weirdos were trying to block like Jewish students from going to class, which was indefensible. I'm sure Hasan defended it, of course. But like, I'm pretty sure that was the only time the protesting people got significant pushback. Maybe on the right, I'm sure they got attacked constantly because people on the right are fucking crazy. But
I also don't place a lot of emphasis on like whatever the media narrative is, because we love doing that.
Yeah.
We love having a conversation about like whose feelings are being hurt in the Western world, when the conversation should be about, you know, who's dying in Gaza.
This podcast is brought to you by US.
Use the code Crooked at checkout for 15% off. On Zionism, you know, being an anti-Zionist, when you say you're an anti-Zionist, are you rejecting the premise that a Jewish homeland is a legitimate project at all? Or is your anti-Zionism specifically about the policies and practices of the Israeli state?
I have never had a journalist ask me questions like this before. And I've spoken to like a couple dozen. Now, maybe he's not a journalist, but typically, if I'm being asked about a controversial question for any like New York Times, WAPO, whatever, when people ask me questions, it's usually going to be like, so you said that the border collie is the hottest dog. Can you explain what you meant by that comment? That's it. I've never had somebody workshop answers for me like this guy does. So you said in your response here, you said that a border collie was the hottest dog. Now, when you said that, were you just trolling or memeing? Keep in mind also what there was something that I said a long time ago, how, what was this? Oh, it was in relation to Trump. It was when I was talking about to Miller. People don't realize how important it is for other people to be engaging well with a person, for you to think that person is doing a good job. There is a reason why studio audiences were added to every single sitcom in the forever, 5 decades of sitcoms, or why there are studio audiences for the night show. If Trump is up there, this is why I said one of the criticisms that I gave before, that I think, it sounds crazy, but I think this would have saved our country, is there should not have been live audiences for the American presidential debates. They shouldn't have happened. And for Donald Trump to make a joke and for nobody to laugh, it would come across as incredibly stupid and crass, and he would stop doing it. It would be very awkward for him to make like a crass joke. But when there's an audience clapping along, woo! You can say anything, because the impression is like, oh shit, this is kind of funny. I'm kind of laughing. It's pretty good. It's pretty good. The people don't realize like how much that helps. So which one is this guy again? I thought this guy was the John guy, but I think this is the other guy, right? When somebody workshops an answer in front of you and then you kind of agree and vibe along with it. Oh, this is John. When you agree and vibe along with it, it builds so much more credibility for your answer. This is why I don't think a journalist would workshop an answer in front of you, because they know that it's going to bolster whatever answer you give.
Is your anti-Zionism specifically about the policies and practices of the Israeli state as it exists today?
I think Zionism is a fascist ideology. It truly.
And how do you? Because I think part
And
of
I'm
the
not
issue.
alone
I think
in
this
this.
is like a definitional issue for two.
Oh my God! Yeah!
Being the premise that a Jewish homeland is a legitimate project at all, or is your anti-Zionism specifically about the policies and practices of the Israeli state as it exists today?
I think Zionism is a fascist ideology. It truly.
And how do you? Because I think part
And
of
I'm
the
not
issue.
alone
I think
in
this
this.
is like a definitional issue for two.
Oh yeah,
I mean,
sure.
obviously, but I do
Yeah.
think that like there's probably a lot of. I think a lot of probably.
Is it possible that they are fully on his side and actively sanewash him because they want to make this normal? No, I just think that there are areas that if you're not in them, you just can't understand. I felt like from 2016 to 2023, I felt like I had the capacity to basically learn anything in the world because I've got a pretty intuitive sense of like, I've got like good heuristics generally. Like I think I can read a thing and I can understand it pretty easily. Like Aspengold XQC, like I think I can figure it out. Once I started Vyvanse and once I started actually like reading stuff, I realized like, holy shit, like everything is pretty deep. There's a lot that you can learn about any particular subject, and one of the downsides to that is it became very hard for me to trust people's like especially when it comes to legal summaries of stuff. I'm like, I feel like I need to read the filings because I don't know if I trust this person's summary, or I need to read the Supreme Court, because the justices, they take all the time writing the opinions out. You can read them and find out what they said instead of somebody else's summary, when I feel like the summaries might be missing important parts of it. There's just a lot going on that's really hard to see. So for people like Pod Save America, as much as I hate to say it, I think a lot of it is just stupid or stupidity. Like they're clueless. They just don't know. I don't think they're trying to intentionally sandwash Hasan. I think they legitimately feel like, oh, like he's just like a bit further to the left, or maybe really left, but like he still wants like progressive changes to America, and we can kind of like align on this road. This is why, like, if you saw me talk to TheSoyPill last night, there was a moment when I was watching JSTLK stream 2 nights ago where I was debating going nuclear. It's like, this TheSoyPill, how could you be so stupid? But the thing is that like for him, and even for, as much as I hate to say it, okay, but he's my, regardless of if he acknowledges it, he's my debate, pervert, pedophile twin, okay, separated at birth and then put into a time machine, okay? Even Pisco, I don't think, realizes like the extent of the infrastructure that exists in some of these communities to try to flip and turn opinions of people. They just don't see it. And, you know, whether we're talking about Pisco or TheSoyPill, like not realizing that this one person that might be DMing them is actually connected to such a huge network of people that are kind of intentionally doing these psyops everywhere. Like I see people are now posting, because these guys have been making overtures towards Hasan's community, right? Is JSTLK in them? And now you've got them posting JSTLK's tweets directly on Hasan's subreddit. I saw this earlier, especially probably because the attacks against Hasan have ramped up. But now you've got Hasan's subreddit is reposting Kiwi Farms clips of Melina to their subreddit to try to attack me. Like all of these people are working together in the background, and it's just really, really hard to see that unless you're really steeped in it. You know, it's really difficult to see it unless you're super steeped in it. So yeah. But that's why it's so frustrating, though, because have you thought of compiling evidence to try to convince some of them? It's just, there's so much, and you would have to have such a commitment from a person to really dig into it and understand it. And most people aren't willing to put in the time to do it. So it's just, yeah. But what are you going to do? I do think, I mean, like, I'll say this. I should say, like, I shouldn't get a pass. These guys shouldn't get a pass. Like, I can give these guys, the Pod Save people shouldn't get a pass. They should know better. They should know better.
What do you, because I think part of the issue, I think this is like a definitional issue for two.
Oh, yeah.
I mean,
sure.
obviously. But I do think that, like, there's probably a lot of, probably secular liberals and even secular Jews in this country who think of Zionism as...
They do.
Like, I like the idea of a Jewish homeland and do not think...
Like, here's the thing that I don't understand. I also hate this because John summarized in the very beginning of this why I fucking hate people like him and the whole podcast world and why it was a fucking mistake. And we need to go back to, Rush Limbaugh called it the drive-by media. We just need to go back to clips. He said in the very beginning, he said this thing where he's like, well, everybody takes you out of context and you don't really get to explain your position a lot. So let's get into it. Now that we're on a podcast, now we can do long-form content. Like, on paper, that sounds amazing. Cool. Oh, we're going to do long-form content. Where are the follow-up questions on anything? Why do we not have follow-up questions on anything? So, like, the Zionism question is a really interesting question, but they never go anywhere with it, right? Oh, so Zionism equals fascism. Why? Because it necessitates Jewish people kicking Palestinians out of their homeland. Oh, okay. Next question. Hold on. Okay, well, let's say that we get rid of Zionism, and now there's no more, Jewish majority state? What happens next? Can we just ask one level deeper? One level deeper! One level deeper! What happens next? Like, talk to me about... Don't make me propagandize for this country that I hope sinks into the ocean tomorrow. Okay, I hate Israel, and I hate everybody over there. I hate all the Middle East, okay? But here's the question. If you were a Jew, and you could live in any country in the Middle East, okay, and you were a random Jew, where would you live, right? Obviously, everybody would say Israel, right? If you were a Westerner, and you could be dropped into and live in any country in the Middle East, where would you live, right? You would obviously choose Israel. But the real shit is if you were an Arab and you had to live in a country anywhere in the Middle East as a random person, where would you live? There's like a decent chance you'd probably want to live in Israel too. Like, there's something is happening here that is not cohesive with the idea that it's like a fascist, genocidal, apartheid, racist, horrible, terrible state. Like, it's just such a stupid concept that is never explored ever. It's never addressed ever. Nobody ever digs into it ever. Like, just ask more questions and talk about it.
secular liberals and even secular Jews in this country who think of Zionism as
They do.
Like I like the idea of a Jewish homeland,
Yeah.
and do not think ethno-state, do not think any
Yeah.
of that other stuff. And then there's
Also, people who talk about, I don't think ethno-state, Jew in the entire world, for almost all of it, Jew means ethnicity. Anybody that says Jew and they start talking about the religion is retarded. It has nothing to do with, it's not religious. The country of Israel started off as a secular Jewish project. It has nothing to do with the religion. When Hitler was going from door to door, they weren't looking for menorahs or manufas or Hanukkahs or whatever the fuck, Monicas or whatever the fuck. They were looking for Jews, ethnically Jewish people, okay? You could just say, oh, I'm not Jew, bro. We celebrate Christmas in this household, all right? We celebrate Christmas here. Like, oh, shit, we were going to Holocaust you. You're cool, bro. I'll see you on the 24th. Let's go. Like,
people who, who very much define it as, no, it must always be a Jewish majority state.
Yeah.
And if democracy and equal rights come second, then so be it.
Yeah.
every state, to some extent, we're so spoiled in the West. And in a way, I love this. I love that in the West, we are so over kind of like ethnic stuff that, like I say this all the time, like even our Nazis are incredibly multiracial. And I love that. The only guy at that UCLA student event that we did that was brave enough to come up and called himself, he said, I'm a white nationalist. And I was just curious. I asked him, like, how do you define, like, who would be allowed? And he was like, you have to be 75% white. First of all, white is that's just a very funny American to your conscience, like white, just white. Okay. So, but then 75%, what does that even mean? Because like, I'm pretty sure if you look at what the average mixed race child looks like with like one black parent or what would it be? One black parent, one white parent, and then another family with two white parents, and then those people have kids, and then the mixed race and the white person have a kid. Would that, I don't know if the way that kid looks on average is a person that most white nationals would be okay having in their movement, but like, it's just, I'm sorry, I hate Trump. Please, Trump. If you're going to be unhinged, just do one thing so we never have to talk about these people again.
Jewish majority state, and if democracy and equal rights come second, then so be it.
Yeah. Well, that is what has happened, right?
Like all of these Arab states in the region, many of them like explicitly call out Arab as part of their, like the charters and constitutions of these countries. Like they all but the thing is, you never hear about them being ethno-states because there aren't, 50 million random other group of ethnic people trying to immigrate to these countries. It doesn't happen, like it's just not.
Which is
de facto,
precisely-
that's what we have right now.
It's de facto what we have
And it's
right
so funny too, because why did the Palestinian Arabs, why do they even want, why are they so mad that Jewish people are even in Israel? It's because they wanted to create a pan-Arab state. Pan-Arab, all Arabs, all similar ethnicities, pan-Arab. That was the whole goal initially. It's okay. I don't care.
now, and it was something that we were always going to head in the direction of, because even Stalin was a big advocate of Israel initially. They were.
The Soviets spent so much time backing all of the Arab states in that region. It's one of the reasons why some people think that maybe, peace with Jordan and everything finally kind of settled, and the region kind of settled down after the fall of the Soviet Union. It's like, okay, no more Soviet Union backing these guys. I kind of got to chill out a lot more, but peace with Egypt came prior to that. But the Soviets were big backers in 56 and 67 and in 73 of the Arab states, but whatever. Okay.
The ones who trafficked weapons in 1947 that were used on Palestinian villages by way of Czechoslovakia, right? Illegally going through the blockade. There was this idea that
because Jewish people there were buying the weapons, but that wasn't because the Soviet Union was making a concerted effort, a deliberate effort to support the Jewish state. But okay. I can't even tell the difference between Middle Eastern Jew and Arabs. Is there really an ethnic difference? Don't tell Jews that, and don't tell Arabs that. But technically, over half the Jews in Israel today are descendants of, I think they're called Mizrahi Jews, so they are Middle Eastern, yeah.
Initially, labor Zionism and Ben Gurion was a socialist, right? Like this was going to be like almost like a Marxist project, but it was just ethnic cleansing from the start. And my assessment on Zionism as an ideology is not that different from Albert Einstein's assessment of Zionism.
Dude, this has to be considered self-harm. It's got to be self-harm. Listening to this, they're just not equipped, bro. They just shouldn't even be having him on.
When he saw Deir Yassin and these and the violence that the early Zionist brigades were engaging in, Haganah, Irgun, Lehi, these militia movements, before the IDF existed, before Israel existed. And he was actually asked to be the first president of Israel. He wrote about what Zionism was turning into. And he warned that what he was seeing was exactly what the Nazis were doing. And he warned about it. He said, if we do not have a commitment to binationalism, if we do not have a commitment to the people that are already living there, the atrocities that I'm seeing that, Zionist brigades are engaging in right now, committing right now against the Palestinians, is going to turn into exactly what the Nazis have done. And he was right. He saw it ahead of time. I mean, he knew what the Nazis were. He lived through it. Right. And so my perspective is shaped by people who have done either extensive research on this, like, Israeli historian like Ilan Pappé, Avi Shlaim, or people who have lived through this process, many of which are Jews who have lived through this process.
He has not read a single Pappé or Schlein book in his life, by the way, but that's okay.
And could not comprehend it. One of the first people that I interviewed after October 7 was Dr. Ofer Kassif. He is the only Jewish anti-Zionist in the Knesset. There's a Palestinian citizen of Israel who's also the only Jewish anti-Zionist in the Knesset. There's a Palestinian citizen of Israel who's also an anti-Zionist in the Knesset. They have like two people, basically. Yeah. It's a lone voice, but they exist, right? I care about the perspective of people like that as well.
Is the other guy who he's referring to Ahmed TV? I interviewed that guy. I think, is he the only Arab in the Knesset, or is he one of? He's been there like the longest. Not good that you don't know that guy. But he knows the Jewish one?
So I develop a better understanding of like what it looks like to have to fight fascist forces in the country that you're a part of, in the country that you love, in the country that you want to change in a better towards a better future, towards a better trajectory. Because I see it as the same fight that I'm fighting here in America. Because Zionism, at the end of the day, like I said, is an ethno-religious supremacist ideology that is external.
Ethno-religious supremacist ideology. Ethno-religious supremacist. Yes.
Nationist, and it's in many respects no different than what we see in MAGA, right? Christian nationalism.
Oh my God.
That is a fascist ideology. I don't think you would disagree with that, right?
No, and there's also ethno-nationalism. Israel has like laws that have put this into place.
Yeah.
But there's
what, like, which ones? What are we talking about here?
De facto ethno-nationalism in many different countries around the world. You could make the same critique of Hindu nationalism, the Turkish treatment of the Kurds.
Again,
right? Japanese immigration policy.
Things that I oppose vehemently and things that I talk about extensively.
Oh, does he? Link me the Hasan Turkey criticism stream, please.
Oftentimes people will yell at me for my criticism of both of those things.
Yeah.
Yeah,
You've said
yell them all the time.
Anti-Semitism. You've drawn a distinction between being anti-Israel and anti-Semitic.
Yeah.
I take that at face value. Here's the harder question.
Wait, why do you take that at face value? Give it all the... Why would you just take it at face value? Really? You just take that at face value? No. Oh, okay, cool. Well, at least he's honest about it. Okay, cool.
Like, where exactly do you draw the line? Because I think most serious people agree that anti-Zionism isn't automatically anti-Semitism.
Yeah.
But there is disagreement where the line runs in specific cases. And I think, some of your rhetoric, whether it's out of context or not, has landed in the gray zone, like calling ultra-Orthodox Jews inbred, comparing liberal Zionists to liberal Nazis, the pig dogs comments.
The pig dog one is, I didn't even know that was like a thing. Did you know that it was
Nope.
Yeah, I don't, because even Jake...
Nope, I didn't know. Nope, I didn't even know. Nope, I didn't even know either, Hasan. I didn't even know either, Hasan.
And again, the issue is, and this is an issue that the mainstream media guys just don't understand, because in the mainstream media, these comments are bad. They do hurt you. Being edgy is really bad for mainstream media, so they fixate on the edginess. But because they fixate on the edginess, they miss the ideology, right? Like, if I was ever brought on and mainstream media guys, they just don't have the brain for this. That when somebody like me or somebody like Hasan is brought into a show and they're like, haven't you said like edgy things in the past? In my mind, I'm like, oh, thank God. You think I'm just edgy? You don't think I'm radical? You just think I'm edgy? Oh, well, it's gonna be a dog walk. Easy. I'm gonna put you on a leash. I'm gonna walk you through this whole interview. It's gonna be so easy. Thank you. Yeah, I say some things that are just edgy sometimes. I should, boom, that's it. You're done. Like, having a radical or extremist ideology just reframed as being edgy is just one of the most beneficial things you can ever have done to you if your ideology is legitimately extremist.
Tapper, when he brought it up, he's like, I don't know what this is, but he was like clearly reading a quote from in front of him. He's like, the ADL gave me
well,
this
I know.
quote.
I went through it and I'm like,
Yeah,
I've seen it, and there's like, well, there's it's
Yeah,
one of those.
I didn't even. It's
how do
like
you-
one of those things.
I
where
guess,
was just like,
I guess
didn't
the
know.
larger question is like, how do you think about, as you're talking about this, drawing the line
Oh my God.
in a way where you're like, okay,
This is why, God, Jews. The annoying thing about anti-Semitism is that, generally speaking, most of the people who are outwardly anti-Semitic are white nationalists. And that's why Hasan and all these weirdo lefties get to say that they're opponents of anti-Semitism, but they're not. They're not really opponents of anti-Semitism. They just don't like fascists or white nationalists, who oftentimes are anti-Semitic.
okay, if I'm going to, I'm anti-Zionist, I want to make this argument, I want to talk about the project, but I really don't want anyone to take it as anti-Semitic.
Yeah.
Not just because it hurts your feelings, but because you're trying to build a political movement.
Yeah, well, it's not just because I want to build a political movement. It's because I also genuinely abhor anti-Semitism. So it's a great question. It's one that I answer all the time, because this is a real problem right now where like anti-Semitism is growing in this country. It's undeniable.
On the right, from white nationalists, from white Christian theocratic nationalists, from MAGA and the white nationalist movement.
As it historically always has, whenever Israel does these sieges, the mowing of the lawn operations, and it's doing it, and it's
Anti-Semitism is just Israel's fault. Me. How was I supposed to know? Also, that mowing the lawn comment, wasn't that a comment made after, I thought that was after Cast Lead in like 2008? When was the first time that mowing the lawn comment was made? And people got real mad about that one. I'm trying to remember which operation. It was in 2005. So the idea that this has been a thing historically, but whatever.
It's tying itself to Judaism in this very sinister way, and it's doing it as whenever Israel does these sieges, the mowing of the lawn operations, and it's doing it, and it's tying itself to Judaism in this very sinister way, and people see that and they think, okay, well, this
So sinister Israelis tying themselves to the Jews. Oh my God.
is the Jewish state doing this.
Apparently in Hungary, Orban is losing, and he's thinking about running to Russia. Chat really wants you to know that. There you go.
Maybe it's the Jews, right? There's already a lot of people that have these opinions about, Jewish billionaires and Jewish millionaires controlling the media, controlling the banking system. So like it pairs up perfectly with what they're seeing.
Yeah.
And we've definitely seen a great deal of that, right? So what I try to do is stress the importance and showcase that
there are good Jews. Like, what are they called? The Voices for Peace? What do you call these people? Is it capos? The name that that's a mean one. And it's like the Uncle Tom, I think, for Jew. It's like Voices for Peace or Jewish Voice for Peace or whatever, who are like the crazy weirdo Jews in the U.S. that hate Israel and will wash all the crazy anti-Semitic shit that comes from the left.
So what I try to do is stress the importance and showcase that this attitude is not monolithic inside of the American Jewry. The reason why I think it's very important, even though I'm a Muslim guy, so most people, when they hear me say
he's a Muslim again. He shapeshifted right before he's back to being Muslim.
that, they don't give a shit, right? Because they're like, yeah, you're goy-splaining.
Okay.
The reason why I stress that importance is because it's true. I mean, there's a funny saying. It's like, what, 2 Jews, 3 opinions, right? Like no group is monolithic, and Jewish
Except for the 90% of Jews that broadly support the existence of a Jewish state. But okay.
Americans certainly are not. They have very different assessments of what's going on, and we see that. We see that in the polling that is conducted, right?
We see it within Israel as well.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't know if people understand this. I'm so sorry. And I know that people don't like the Hasan focus or fixation, or people are wondering, why are we talking about this so much? And I see he contra-tweeted this. I think we should all just pay less attention to him. So right now, the moment we're in American politics is there is a vacuum for the next political party in this midterm season. This one right now. And then in 2 years, there'll be another kind of vacuum. The Republican Party has self-destructed so much that the Democrats are guaranteed to win. It doesn't matter what happens. They could run almost anybody. And, we're talking about the Senate and everything now. Like, that's how the conservative movement is. Meaning that right now, this is the time for the Democratic Party to really identify, like, what do we stand for? You know, what is our movement about? What are we trying to do once we get into office? That's why these fights are happening right now. So you get people like Hasan that when they're getting called out a little bit too much and they realize because their actual ideology is not palatable at all to the majority of Democrats, and they're like, why can't we focus on Trump? Why can't we focus over there, guys? Like, what? You know, never mind the fact that they spend 99% of their time attacking the left. Although they never have to say left, right? They have terms like, we shouldn't be punching left, guys, because they're so far left, they're always punching right. So it's a very convenient position for them to occupy. But that's why we're having this fight right now. And it really is, it is a fight worth having. But
exactly, no. I mean, well, Israel's a little bit different because like at a certain point, there is an we see that in the polling that is conducted, right?
We see it within Israel as well.
Yeah, exactly. No, I mean...
You don't, John. Yeah, I don't know why you're... Is he Jewish? Bro, this is why Israelis hate American Jews. I don't know if he's Jewish or not, but there are a lot of retarded American Jews. Or just because you're Jewish doesn't mean you know anything about Israel, especially if you're in the United States, okay? There's no natural tie there as much as cultural Muslims like Hasan want you to think. This idea that it's a hot controversial take among Jews on whether or not there should be a Jewish majority state, that's just not true. It's just not true. It's not like a heated debate of like, should we give our whole country away to the Arabs? That's just not a thing that most people, you have to go to the very, very, very outer stretches of people to find that amongst Jewish people.
In the polling that is conducted, right?
We see it within Israel as well.
Yeah, exactly. No, I mean, well, Israel's a little bit different because like at a certain point, there is an overwhelming force of people who are on board.
You're there. It's a different perspective.
Yeah.
I get that.
So,
are you accepting any media appearances on reasonably popular stuff about the Hasan narrative, or are you avoiding it? Yeah, of course I would. But the issue is that most of the media, so Hasan will never take a critical interview, right? It's always going to be for PR slop stuff, like what John is willing to do for him here. And if I were to challenge anybody that would be favorably platforming Hasan, that would mean that I would have to go on a media platform and do a critical interview. But those media platforms that are willing to platform Hasan are probably not going to be media platforms that are willing to have critical interviews. So that's the issue, is at least not over this subject. So I would do it, but they would never. You know.
What I show always to people is that there's a difference between a lot of Jewish institutions and how Jews actually feel. And I actually sometimes will make a plea to not only my Jewish fans, but just to whoever is listening. And hopefully people will take away this message as well, to try to separate Israel from their institutions and to show themselves as if you consider what Israel's doing to be repugnant.
Like, it's actually criminal. Like, if I was a Jew, I would hate Pod Save America. Hasan was pressed in the hardest manner possible on whether or not he would consider babies as settlers in the state of Israel, valid military targets. And even when pressed on Ethan Klein's podcast with him, on the Leftovers podcast, with their joint podcast, in an adversarial environment where Hasan should have been giving like the nicest answer possible, because that was an adversarial conversation. Even in that environment, Hasan said there can be baby settlers, yes. But here on this show, where John Goy is content to let Hasan completely sane-wash every single thing he said, now listen to this distinction. Well, I just want people to realize that Jewish people, even in Israel, they're not their institutions. The Jewish people over here, that's not the government. The average Jew isn't like this. The average Jew isn't the Jewish institutions of Israel. They're people that hate the country of Israel just like you and me. They don't think there should be a Zionist project in the Middle East. They also want to go back to Brooklyn, bro.
Show themselves as if you consider what Israel's doing to be repugnant, then stress that there is that distinction between a Jewish institution that you might be a part of and how much they celebrate Israel, or how much they try to fundraise for the IDF, for example, or do settler fairs, which are illegal, inside a synagogue, right? Because from what my experience, there are a lot of Jewish advocacy organizations in this country and a lot of Jewish institutions in this country that simply masquerade as Jewish institutions and Jewish advocacy organizations
but they're actually Zionist or Israeli institutions.
They're just pro-Israel advocacy organizations and institutions. The ADL is a great example of this. The Apartheid Defense League, as I like to call them, led by Jonathan Greenblatt, is very obviously not.
Also, by the way, it's funny because in a way, this is a microcosm of another microcosm of like the macrocosm for Jewish people. So one of the arguments that Jewish people always give for Israel is that, listen, at the end of the day, when shit hits the fan, we need a place to go to. And usually the Westerners' retort is, bro, hello? There's the entire Western world where you can go to. You guys will be fine. And the Israeli response will be, if things are bad, maybe we can go to the West. But like when shit hits the fan, none of you and the West are going to defend us. It didn't happen in the Holocaust. You know, we were explicitly shut out of every other country to be mass killed by the Germans. When you see stuff like this is the type of stuff that Israelis view as insanely powerful propaganda for their country, right? Like, you're relying on Western states to defend you. You're relying on Western states to defend the concept of your existence as a people everywhere else. Well, here are the types of people that go onto their podcasts and talk about, you know, the Jewish people, the country of Israel. This is the propaganda they do. This is how they speak about, you know, the country of Israel and everything else. You know, nothing to say about any of the other violence that happens in the Middle East ever. And this is what reinforces their opinion of, you know, like, yeah, we got to have a country to go back to, you know.
Led by Jonathan Greenblatt is very obviously not invested in combating anti-Semitism at all, and is simply using anti-Semitism in this cynical way to attack critics of Israel, prominent critics of Israel that have spent decades fighting anti-Semitism and still continue to do so, myself included. And that separation, that lack of separation rather, is teaching Americans who have not been inundated with, Zionist indoctrination, who don't have any association with Jews other than watching Seinfeld and thinking, oh, you know, they control the media, but they make good movies, right? Like, that's the attitude of the average American about Jewish people who are...
The average person thinks the Jews control the media, but they make good movies.
Control the media, but they make good movies, right? Like, that's the attitude of the average American about Jewish people who are I think the most celebrated religious minority in this country, most celebrated religious group in this country.
Also the ones with the most per capita hate crimes against them. He'll never bring that up, but that's okay.
I don't know where it is right now, but that's what the polling is consistently. And the least is, I think, Mormons, weirdly enough. But anyway, surprising. But the way that people see it is they watch heinous violence unfold, and they see the Israeli state call itself the Jewish state, and then they see American Jews and Jewish institutions say, yes, that is the Jewish state. Zionism is important to us. It is the most important thing. We are tied to Israel in this inseparable way. We do care about it, and you as an American should shut up. You as an American should be canceled. You as an American should not have a job if you speak out against Israel because you're being anti-Semitic. What lesson are we teaching America? We're teaching them that
the Jews rule us.
Every Jewish person demonstrates
Israel.
dual loyalty, which is false. It's a trope. It's a lie. It's not true. But that's what we're teaching people. And we're also teaching people that everything that Israel does, it does for Jews. Every time we call Israel the Jewish state, that's what we're doing. That's what we're teaching regular Americans. So I try to combat those forces on a daily basis. And ironically enough, I would say this, like, at my size, in the streamer universe, especially, where most of the prominent Israel critics are, you know, Candace Owens, Tucker Carlson, Nick Fuentes, and many other right-wing forces. They don't,
all of whom align basically one-to-one with Hasan's views of Israel and Jews in America, by the way.
Care about making that distinction. I do. So it blows my mind that groups like the Apartheid Defense League spend most of their time trying to deplatform me.
And when you hear them too, you'll hear, I mean, some of them are just all conspiracy all the time, but like, you know, Tucker Carlson's a good example. They'll be like, he'll do like a very thoughtful critique of Israel and then suddenly like launch into a conspiracy where you're like, okay, now we're just, is just, I mean, some of them are just all conspiracy all the time, but like, you know, Tucker Carlson's a good example. They'll be like, he'll do like a very thoughtful critique of Israel and then suddenly like launch into a conspiracy where you're like, okay, now.
By the way, he was retweeting that last crazy Tucker Carlson rant against Trump. He was retweeting it saying like, this is some pretty crazy stuff, guys. You should watch this whole 1 hour Tucker Carlson episode.
Now we're just, is just, now we're into anti-Semitic territory. Now it's a Jewish conspiracy for this and that and the other thing. And it's like, they do, it is a real difference. But I do think that, like, look, I find as someone who has not always talked about this issue, but has a lot recently, like it feels often like a minefield as you're talking about it, because I very much like the idea that
it's a minefield because you're uneducated and retarded. It should feel like a minefield if you haven't done any research into it. It's the same way with a white person talking about black issues. Could you imagine a panel of 5 white guys and they're like, today we're going to go over the drill rap beef and how Malcolm X's speech in whatever place, like blah, 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 blah. I don't know. like with no concept of anything going on in contemporary black culture or in historical black culture, anything, and just like, well, we're going to talk about all this today, having no idea. Like, wow, this guy, I don't know why he's strapped so much. Maybe he's into BDSM. We don't understand. Like, it's just so stupid. Like, none of these conversations should be minefields. If it's a minefield, is when you don't know what the fuck you're talking about and you're constantly shoving your feet in your mouth because you don't know what the fuck is going on.
As you're talking about it, because I very much like the idea that I would say anything anti-Semitic is like horrifying to me. You know, I believe anti-Semitism is very, very real.
What does that even mean? You should ask Matt, what does it mean to be anti-Semitic? What does anti-Semitism mean to you? Because in the United States, we have very sophisticated definitions of racism. Like, we would never, ever, ever say, right? Like, think of the lens, I think Ezra Klein, oh my God, sorry, I know, I'm just moving away from everybody. Ezra Klein is on my hater list. Only because, but maybe not, hold on, I'm sorry. I read one quote. I didn't read the article yet, but I read one quote. Wait, where's this article at? Hold on. I got you, unknown. Wait, did they change the article title? From Hasan Piker is not the enemy to this is why there's no liberal Joe Rogan. Oh my God. This paragraph, I read this morning, and then I didn't read any other part of this because, no, wait, it's not this one, hold on. But to focus only on those comments is to miss much else that Piker has said and believes. He also said, from pogroms to the Holocaust, Jews have always been singled out by those in power as a scapegoat for the instability and economic volatility that people in power caused. A resilient, nascent anti-Semitism is a constant threat. Is it nascent? It might be nascent. He has called anti-Semitism gross, immoral, and a hate crime. He has promoted John Ossoff, a Democratic senator from Georgia who is Jewish, as a 2028 presidential possibility. In previous presidential primaries, Piker supported Bernie Sanders, who is also Jewish. It is an unusual form of Jew hatred that calls out anti-Semitism and promotes Jewish Americans for the presidency. Imagine if we applied this lens to the Republican Party or to all of the crazy anti-black racism of like the 90s, right? And like early 2000s, you know? Like, how could you possibly say that Rush Limbaugh is racist when he says, I am not racist, and when he says racism is disgusting? How could you possibly think these people are disgusting when they have, black media pundits, when they have there were more blacks in the 2016 Republican primary than there were in the 2020 Democratic primary or whatever, I think, right? You had Ben Carson and you had Herman Cain. They were in the same one, right? And then you had, was there a third one? Might have just been those two. And then for the Democratic one, you only had, was it just Cory Booker? I don't remember if there was another one or not. Oh, Harris. Okay, you could say the same number then, I guess. Booker is like half though, right? Well, let's be real. I'm just kidding. But I'm like, we would never, ever, ever take such a childlike view, such a naive view of racism here. You know, we would never, ever, ever let that slide. But when it comes to this, though, it's just like, so the analysis on the rhetoric and the ideology of these people on the far left is just like, it's so childlike. It's so naive. It's so undeveloped.
But it is quite difficult because a lot of very pro-Israel voices will say that's anti-Semitic because you've critiqued Israel.
Also, by the way, there is zero shot. Mark my words. There is zero shot that Hasan would ever support Ossoff in an actual primary for president. No, quote me now, clip me later. For a Jewish guy to be president of the United States, no shot. No shot ever.
It's very, very real. But it is quite difficult because a lot of very pro-Israel voices will say that's anti-Semitic because you've critiqued Israel.
There's also a lot of stuff.
And like, this is the weakest argument. He's giving the weakest arguments on the other side. Like, well, people say that you're anti-Semitic because you criticize Israel. These are layup questions again. These are layups. And I like how he gives him a layup question and then he does the layup for him. He doesn't even wait for his own answer. He gives the layup response. My God.
Look, I find as someone who has not always talked about this issue, but has a lot recently, like it feels often like a minefield as you're talking about it, because I very much like the idea that I would say anything anti-Semitic is like horrifying to me. You know, I believe anti-Semitism is very, very real. But it is quite difficult because a lot of very pro-Israel voices will say that's anti-Semitic because you've critiqued Israel.
There's also a lot of stuff.
There's
also a lot of stuff that Israel does or Israel advocacy groups do that objectively does look insane when you explain it. Like one of
do the cum thing, do the cum harvesting, please.
The things that I've talked about.
Do it.
Or one of the things I talked about early on was sometimes you hear something that Israel has done and you're like, did they do that? Are you being anti-Semitic right now? And then you find out, you're like, oh my God, they did do that. That is insane. So like, there is that element of it too, where on the one hand, a lot of defenders of Israel will call like anything that you say blood libel, like, oh, Israel kills children. That's blood libel. How dare you say that? It's like, well, I've seen it. Like, I've seen the children. The numbers are there. And I've also personally seen some of the children that have been murdered with these bombing campaigns, right? So that already undermines the impact of blood libel as a way to have a conversation about blood libel to begin with, which is a real historic wrong, a real historic way to associate people of the Jewish faith with, like, whatever heinous acts that led to the pogroms, right? So you're undermining anti-Semitism every time you do that, but then also simultaneously you're teaching people that, like, this is a good thing, like this is something that you defend, this is something that you consider to be defensible, and you're doing that while you're associating with Judaism. It's the way I explain it. I delivered a speech at the Oxford Union a year and a half ago at this point, and the way I explained it to people, and at the time the change in attitude in the Western world was not so calcified, right? But my positions were obviously the same, and I explained to people, look, what a lot of people don't understand with this dangerous conflation, I will give you a warning as a Muslim American who has lived in the United States of
Oh my God. All the anti-Muslim hatred that Hasan has had to battle in his life.
America since 2009 and has experienced Islamophobia.
Oh my God.
A lot of people think that Israel is still, an acceptable country. It's no longer an acceptable country. It will become a pariah state if it hasn't already. It has always been a pariah state for the third world, but now in the first world, in the developed nations, people are beginning to recognize Israel as a pariah state. The previous ways of defending Israel by saying it's the most moral nation on earth, it's the only democracy in the region, no matter how racialized those tropes were and how silly they were, it worked because most people were oblivious to what Israel does. Now they know. So this would be equivalent to me running around and saying, you can't criticize Saudi Arabia because
Wait, what? Can you explain how Israel has made Jews safer? The argument proposed that Jews are safer in Israel compared to anywhere else, not just the Middle East/Africa. The idea is supposed to be that Jewish people don't believe that Western countries would defend them if the countries were to become insanely anti-Semitic, akin to like a ethnic cleansing or Holocaust tier event, again, is the idea. That's the idea that Jewish people that live in Israel, or that the country of Israel tries to, or believes in, that these people believe in.
Mecca is there, Medina is there, the Kaaba is in Saudi Arabia. You cannot criticize Saudi Arabia's blockade against Yemen, for example, because you're Islamophobic.
Who has ever said that in the media one time ever? You're criticizing Saudi Arabia fighting in Yemen? That I don't know if that combination of words has literally ever been said ever.
People were oblivious to what Israel does. Now they know. So this would be equivalent to me running around and saying, you can't criticize...
Oh, I'm sorry. He's saying that this would be the equivalent. It's never running. Okay, sorry.
Saudi Arabia, because the Mecca is there, Medina is there, the Kaaba is in Saudi Arabia. You cannot criticize Saudi Arabia's blockade against Yemen, for example, because you're Islamophobic. This would be the equivalent of me running around as a Muslim saying, I'm a Muslim, and our institutions, our mosques, are...
Well, there were other things, though, that we weren't able to criticize that were really weird because people would call us Islamophobic. Like, I remember probably the two largest Western discourses was, one had to do with hijab, whether or not women wearing hijab or being forced to wear hijab was okay or not. And anytime you even question that, you were immediately labeled Islamophobic. This is probably like 10 plus years ago. I don't know if it doesn't really come as much anymore. And then it was a hot topic in France for a while because I believe Macron and his administration banned full face coverings from public areas, I think. Somebody tell me if I'm right or wrong on that. And people got mad because they thought it was an attack against, is it Talik and Burqa or whatever? The two big face covering costumes that they wear or whatever. And then people got accused of being Islamophobic if you were okay with those masking laws. Was it just if you worked a government job? I thought it was in certain public areas or whatever. You weren't allowed to wear a mask, or it's something that completely covered your face. Niqab? That might be it.
Fundraising for ISIS, and if you criticize ISIS, if you dare say anything about the Islamic State that are trying to implement a caliphate, that's true Islam, you're Islamophobic. And then the media was also defending that position, and all of our institutions were defending that position.
Well, apparently they're not allowed to wear it in schools too.
I think it's easier now for, unfortunately, very unfortunately, for Americans to understand because we are seeing something like that happen here in the United States under Trump. But also, like, I think this will sound crazy, but I thought Islam, you're Islamophobic. And then the media was also defending that position, and all of our institutions were defending that position. Well, I also think it's easier now for, unfortunately, very unfortunately, for Americans to understand because we are seeing something like that happen here in the United States under Trump. But also, like, I think this will sound crazy, but I thought one of the most compelling things, maybe one of the only compelling things Joe Biden said after October 7th, right after October 7th, was
one of the only compelling things, because Biden was such a fucking retard. What a fucking loser retard. Ugh. You know what? You want the hottest take? If you wanted to come out and trigger literally every single person in the United States, the center left, the far left, and MAGA, I think the take is, I think Biden would have won. I think Biden, they should have kept him. They should have had him make jokes about flubbing his speech. He would have beat Trump again. I'm just kidding.
Yeah, right. Yeah, it was that. He warned, he gave a warning to Israel, don't do what we did after 9/11.
Yeah.
Don't make that mistake. Now,
yeah, and then
we know what happens.
And then he went and hugged Benjamin Netanyahu.
Right, we all know what happened from there. But I think about that often because, and now all these, these years later, as Trump's second term has, he's charging towards an authoritarian state as well. I'm always like, how can you, like, of course, it's easy to imagine another country doing something like this because it's happening here.
Yeah, no, that's
so,
my
like,
argument. Exactly.
That's why it's not. It doesn't have to do with anything about the specific religion. It's what happens when people are in power and they decide to use that power to oppress other people. Like that is the. All right, let's get back to American politics before we close.
I mean, I would say Israel politics is American.
It is right now. Yeah,
it's like you also brought up, and not just like foreign policy. I mean, what you're talking about is correct. It's the same exact fascist forces, and sometimes it's the same exact like ethno-religious attitudes, like the ethno-religious supremacist attitudes that is the guiding principle of this growing MAGA fascist movement in this country.
Stephen Miller.
Pod Save America is brought to you by Rocket Money. I realized that's rocketmoney.com/crooked, rocketmoney.com/crooked.
We got midterms in November. 2028 Democratic primary is already beginning. We had a bunch of potential candidates. We're at Sharpton's event in New York. The DNC winter meeting kicked off Thursday. How do you see your role in electoral politics over the next few years?
I see myself as a megaphone for the people. And
I hate populism. I hate populism so much, dude.
I'm fortunate enough to have a fairly large platform at this point. So the way I look at it is, look, I have a lot of door knockers, phone bankers, fundraisers in my community.
God, really?
Community leaders. And people that are, running for office as well, running for office themselves, labor organizers, and the media as well. So, like, these are some of the most tuned in people to politics. They're tuning into politics when it's boring. They're tuning into politics before the primaries, right? And they're certainly tuning in the general. You want to talk to these people because even if size-wise they might not be the biggest force, like I don't have the same audience as like Joe Rogan, for example, their impact is outside. So you want to be able to convince these people that you're their guy.
But somehow this community, I like how he also presents it as just his community, right? And not like all the other weirdo tanky Majority Report and Kyle Kalinske and Crystal Ball and all these other people that are in his camp, right? Haven't gotten anybody elected in like 10 years. Like this whole far left movement has just been, besides like the Justice Dems, who like that's 4 people of whom most of them I feel like shit on AOC every other day now, right? Like where is your political movement? Where is the power? Like what's happening? Wait, somebody said there's a clip of his on Ossoff.
By Destiny, isn't he canvassing for the left? Yeah, dude, the left is John Ossoff. My dick.
5 years ago? Yeah, this was when he was...
I already had one controversial figure on.
He hated Ossoff, dude. Because Ossoff... I think it was because Ossoff didn't come out and, like, super champion single payer or whatever. And keep in mind, we're senator seats in fucking Georgia. So while we were out here doing our first few canvassing operations, while we were doing this in Georgia for Ossoff and Warnock, he was sitting at home making fun of it all and because he hated these people.
If I was going to have smaller content creators on, I would rather have them be... lefties that with relevant politics, like Canadian lefties, like the Serfs, for example.
The Serfs TV, Lance.
And a lot of politicians have recognized that. And it's really interesting because like these past 2 weeks, they've been, writing all of these different things about, how dangerous it is and Democrats shouldn't associate with me. And then they're like, associate with us the third way instead. And it's like, no one cares about that. But I have, fielded hundreds of requests at this point leading up to the primaries. After those articles came out, it probably 10x'd. It's insane. People are just like, yeah, okay, I don't care. Yeah, please, let's do a meetup. Yes. And places that you would find very interesting as well. It's not just like, radical lefty candidates either. There are a lot of people who are like,
oh, true. I remember when Hasan was bitching about his community because he couldn't get them to do anything. This was last year. Wow, lots of help, guys. Thanks a lot, really. I just wanted some screenshots. People have their communities to do letter writing campaigns to Congress. I can't even get a screenshot. He's complained a lot about his community not doing stuff in the past, though. It just depends on what the current narrative is. But
this is clearly a massive audience. You have the capacity to communicate with, young men especially, and we want to be able to reach out to those people that we've lost. So, that's it.
Before this last media cycle for you, there was one, I think in March. You said you wouldn't vote for Gavin Newsom against JD Vance in 2028. You vote third party.
I mean, I don't even think that's going to be a problem.
Nice. Yes, avoid the entire hypothetical. Well, I don't think he's going to be how would you feel if you didn't eat breakfast? Well, I don't know. I did eat breakfast. It's like, oh my God.
But like a lot of people, including people who share a lot of your critiques of the Democratic Party, hear that and think like this is the problem. When the stakes are concrete, like a Vance presidency, another 4 years of what we're living through, the people who say they're building a movement would, rather preserve their own power than, do what winning requires and, hold your nose and vote for what you believe would be the lesser of two evils. Like, how do you respond to that? I realize that you are a California voter, but...
Look at all the excuses that he sets up in advance. It's so crazy. The dick sucking, all this podcast, it's insane to me. Holy shit. Did you think they after? I'm so curious. My God.
Have fans and audience, I'm sure, in a lot of the swing states.
Yeah.
Like, what do you tell people who follow you, who respect you, who happen to live in swing states as we head to 2026 and 2028?
I want the Democratic Party to treat me like a never Trumper. I want the Democratic Party to treat me like a triple Trump voter, okay? Because it turns out that's all they're tuned into. So if
the never Trumpers, you mean like Liz Cheney or Adam Kinzinger, like the people that were actually trying to make it so that Trump wouldn't win the next election? What do you mean the never Trumpers are more appealable to than you guys? The never Trumpers share more in values. Now they'll say, well, of course, because you guys are all far right conservatives. No, it's because they recognize the threat that Trump is to the country, and you think both parties are the fucking same.
What it takes for the Democrats to turn around and be like, wait a minute, we're losing this guy. We have to win him over again or whatever, instead of just like taking my vote for granted as they've done so over and over again.
Taking your vote for granted? You didn't vote for Kamala. You didn't even support them. What are you talking about?
Left flank. And then, I'm going to say things that may or may not end up being true, but it doesn't matter. We're so far out from the election anyway that it's like, I'm just saying, look, now is your opportunity to find a good candidate instead.
But you see as we head into these, that like after what we've lived through these last years, the stakes and the stark difference between even a Democrat who you and I might find not up to par, to say the least, versus Vance or whoever the they put up.
Of course. I mean, I hate Republicans. I oppose them. I say that all the time. I think that the Republicans are far more damaging. The biggest terrorists, the biggest domestic terrorists in this country, the biggest terrorist internationally is the Republican Party. And not only that, but it's just like I want to fight against the growing fascist movement in this country. My frustration with the Democrats is their conciliatory attitude towards that and their lack of investment in this struggle. This idea that, on the one hand, you say Donald Trump's a dangerous force. I see that. I recognize that. But then you turn around and you take on his anti-immigrant narratives and anti-immigrant messaging from the 2020 election that you won and decide you're going to be the sincere candidate that ends up, dealing with the growth of migration in this country. It's a failure. If you were serious about being an anti-fascist, if you were serious about combating these forces, you would take it more seriously. You would do everything you can. You wouldn't try to win by your own coalition that you want to build and parade Liz Cheney around and act as though you're going to win with never Trumpers or whatever. You would do everything in your power to talk to people on your left flank. And we're seeing that now better than ever before with people like Plattner in Maine, right? That you can actually be an outspoken leftist that says I'm pro Medicare for all, I'm an anti-Zionist, I'm anti-genocide. You have candidates like that winning.
Your top three things, Medicare for all, go ahead, gotta throw that one in there. Anti-Zionist, anti-genocide, Israel. Two.
At least, inshallah, winning in places like Maine.
God, kill me.
No Jew, no news.
Oh, kill me.
Inshallah.
And in unseating Republicans, even you got Dan Osborne. Not every single one of these guys is the same.
Yeah.
Right? They don't always have.
They're gonna all their positions are gonna line up.
Yeah, they're not uniform, but there is this broad left flank, left populism, Bernie-crat attitude that I'm seeing from a lot of candidates, and I think the centrist forces are very afraid of the movement that is building.
Now that I think about it, during the era you knew Hasan, he never really talked about Israel, did he? He mostly talked about healthcare and racism. Yeah, no, they never talked about it, not as much. They might have brought it up during the, my brain is slowly losing all of its, what was the name of that fucking neighborhood? It's in East Jerusalem. I went there and I interviewed some of the people that lived in the apartments. Sheikh Jarrah, that was it, that neighborhood. That was a big deal in 2020, where was I living? I was in Huntington Beach. 2022? 2021? No, wait, was that before COVID? Dude, COVID fried my time perception. 2021? Okay.
The movement that is brewing on that side, because they don't want 1,000 Zorons. I want 1,000 Zorons to bloom, okay? Let 1,000 Zorons blossom all around the country. That's what I want.
He's very popular right now.
Yeah.
Do you want to say something nice about...
He's not, by the way. Listen, and I'm Zoran's #1 supporter, but in terms of broad appeal to the Democratic Party, I think the top 3 were... I'm not going to remember it. I think AOC was 3rd, but I think the top 2 were just moderate Dems. Well, I think one was Harris. It might have been Newsom, Harris. Oh, no, was it Newsom and Pete Buttigieg were all up there? Somebody linked me that list or whatever, the last one they did.
John Ossoff, or do you like him enough that you realize saying something nice about him would be bad?
I don't think, see, that's the thing. Yeah. I don't believe that, because if I believed that I would be a burden to campaigns, I wouldn't go out and campaign with people that I like.
Oh my.
Yeah.
They ironically enough did think that way back in the day when I first actually worked with Austin.
Oh, sorry. Harris, Newsom. Oh wait, this is not a broad popularity one. It's just who would win if people voted. Harris, Newsom, and Buttigieg are top 3. AOC is 4. Josh is 5. Mark Kelly and Pritzker 6 and 7. Rewind 5 seconds. He's about to skinwalk you. Hold on. Presidential nomination. We have, same thing. I think, yeah. Harris, Newsom, Buttigieg. AOC is 4. And then Shapiro, Kelly, Pritzker, Booker, Bashir, Whitmer. To be fair, I don't think Zoran would be on this list, right? Would he be? I don't know if he was even put here to... There's a broad poll for like who are the most popular Democrats or whatever. It might be this YouGov one that I'm thinking of. Hold on. No. The most popular Democrats, Q1 in 2026. We've got Obama. We've got Sanders, Harris. So you got Sanders there, 2nd. Okay. Harris. Biden is still there. Warren, AOC. And Zoran comes here at 7th, which is high, which is good. But the idea that... this is like the most popular guy. I want 1,000 Zorons, right? Like if you were to say, do you want 1,000 Obamas? He'd say no. 1,000 Bernies? Maybe. 1,000 Kamala Harrises? No, he would jump. He'd rope. 1,000 Bidens? He would rope.
Soft campaign. And then the Raphael Warnock campaign, the first election that they did, right? And I worked with them privately. I set it up to, didn't go out and campaign with people that I like.
Yeah.
They ironically enough did think that way back in the day when I first actually worked with the Ossoff campaign. And then the Raphael Warnock campaign, the first election that they did, right? And I worked with them privately. I set it up to, for them to do something on Twitch, but I did it on background because they were worried that like associating with me even...
What did he think he did? What did he do?
And back then would be bad for Georgia. I don't agree. I don't think that's the case at all.
Wait, him talking about this.
Hasan is me. Hasan makes more money than me by a factor of a huge margin. You know that, right?
This could be true.
Hasan is the CEO.
What? Give me the timestamp. What am I not watching a 22-minute video on this?
This could be true, by the way.
Yo.
No, I don't know if it's true or not, but it's not unlikely.
1%.
522.
The other good reason for sometimes donating publicly is because it gets other people to donate. So in the AOC stream, it was a good place to do that because Hasan works with Ossoff, and you wonder why he's not saying bring M4A. No, I'm working with the Ossoff Warnock double campaign to get them elected in the state of Georgia in the Senate race, and what I'm doing for that is to help them get onboarded with Twitch. That's entirely different than having and also I've never ever
help them get onboarded with Twitch. What do you think they need? What does that even mean? Doesn't Twitch have like employees? Wait, what do you
shielded myself from criticizing John Ossoff especially. It is
that, and we saw that was a lie. He made fun of him with me, and there were other comments he made too, but
insane. I like Warnock. I think Warnock is great, but they are both Ossoff and Warnock are way better than they are way better than the Republicans in those positions.
Look at the size of that thing.
Look,
maybe he should shrink his shoulders. Love you, Hass.
I want what you want. You try to have a popular movement to push a speaker vote concession from the grassroots instead of the politicians. That's a great shift in politics, and you're ignoring it. Where's the progressive and incremental change that ultimately gets voided by massive corporate socialism? What? Look, no matter what happens, it does not matter. Like people will always be like,
is that it? Okay.
You look at all these places. You look at like some of the most conservative places in like Virginia or West Virginia even, and you poll them on things like, what do you think about the DSA? What do you think about Israel? And it's like they're a lot closer to me than they are to an establishment Democrat.
You think people in West Virginia are favorable to the DSA?
Right? And the same goes for Medicare for all. So like the idea that we have not also polarized in the exact same way that the Republicans have is very silly. We're in a very different political environment now, and we're in a very different media environment right now. And it's actually mainstream media that's trying to play catch up. It's actually the establishment Democrats that are trying to play catch up to where the public is actually at. Most people don't care about this stuff. They see the clips and they go, okay, that sounds kind of crazy. Let me go check this guy out. And then they hear what I have to say, because I'm not a political operative that doesn't have his own platform. I'm a political operative with his own platform that is competitive with these other platforms that are speaking over him. So I'm endlessly accessible. You can just come and see what I have to say, see what I'm about, and very quickly realize that perhaps the way that I'm being presented in mainstream news is maybe not the right way. Maybe it's a little bit of a manufactured outrage campaign.
For sure.
And one example I'll use is this. I was monitoring the situation on my flight back from Michigan to Los Angeles, which apparently some agent of Laura Loomer took a photo of me sleeping, which was so crazy. But while I was monitoring the situation, I was listening to Dana Bash talk about what's going on in Iran. Then all of a sudden, Dana Bash starts talking about me. And it had my choice quotes up there, like the most insincere one is me actually defending or claiming that I'm, defending race or whatever, like denying sexual.
I didn't bring that one up because I do think that was the most out of context one.
Yeah.
What? Out of context? How? What was out of context about it? What do you mean?
That was so messed up.
You weren't saying rape matter. You were saying
it doesn't justify genocide.
It doesn't.
Oh, sorry. I thought he was talking about the college kids one. Never mind. But okay.
And I was the moral calculus on either side. I think, which is I'm just like it's Hamas did something.
Oh, in case you're wondering, because some people I saw were asking this in chat, I think the other day, the reason why they all are crazy dedicated to denying that any happened, or maybe they'll say one or two might have happened, who knows, on October 7th, is because they feel like the rape myth is something that Israelis push in order to justify the genocide. So that's why they're all of them are so ardent in denying that any kind of like sexual violence was coordinated or happened like that.
They denied the babies too, right?
Yeah, although the baby thing is annoying because I think it was somebody in Israeli media said that a baby had been found either beheaded or on fire or something. And then it was a French media outlet that published something that like there were 40 beheaded babies. And then somehow the beheaded baby thing got attributed to the Israeli state media. I don't even know if there is Israeli state media, but somehow like Israeli media. And then everybody was like, Israel made up the 40 beheaded baby thing. But that was like a whole retarded schism of dumb shit. But most people today still think that Israel made up that 40 beheaded baby claim, but it didn't. It was some French media tweet that was not correct. But also these same people still think that like the Al-Ali hospital was actually bombed by the IDF, that it was a JDAM, and that 500 people were killed when Israel bombed that hospital for no reason, even though I think most people now agree that it was probably I think Palestinian Islamic Jihad rocket that malfunctioned and then fell in a parking lot and a few people got killed. I don't know how many. I thought it was like 10 or 20 and then maybe a few more injured, but
catastrophic and committed horrible atrocities.
You brought up
whether rape or not existed, like that, it was still.
You brought up a really good point. Israel had a literal pro-rape January 6th style riot after 6 of.
I need to do more reading into this because I hear this point brought up a lot. I don't have any counter stickers. I haven't read into it. That Israelis were protesting to say that their soldiers should be allowed to rape prisoners. I just haven't looked into it as much because it sounded so ridiculous. But
the Israeli occupation forces concentration camp guards, as they came on, were prosecuted for raping Palestinian prisoners, and they released them.
Well,
and then Benjamin Netanyahu apologized for even attempting to prosecute them, and now one of them is like a famous television guy. I still don't think that. I think that's the most heinous thing. That's the most insane thing I've ever heard. Right?
Again, back to my universal principle.
But I still don't think Israel should be wiped out.
Sexual violence, horrific, no matter who commits it.
Anyway. Yeah, but I don't think Israel should receive what Israel has done to the Palestinians in retaliation to that. That's my assessment. That's my attitude. But wait, what was I saying?
Bash.
Oh, so I saw Dana Bash. So there's a guy sitting next to me, and he's looking at the TV. He's also watching CNN. He turns around. It's like, is that you? And I was like, haha, no.
Wait, on the plane or hold on, what?
And then they clapped, yeah.
Israel has done to the Palestinians in retaliation to that. That's my assessment. That's my attitude. But wait,
You
what was
saw
I
Dana
saying?
Bash.
Oh, so I
Pull
saw
up the
Dana
quotes.
Bash. So
This is what
there's a guy sitting next to me, and he's looking at the TV. He's also watching CNN. He turns around. It's like, is that you? And I was like, haha, no. And then I was like, yeah, it's me. And the quote that was on.
Who, is he talking about Austin? The guy he was sleeping next to on the plane? What in first class? Like, so I don't even think these seats have TVs at the back of them. Okay.
The screen was America Deserved 9/11. So I'm
That is your
going
greatest hit.
through the motions of like, this guy is sitting next to a big bearded dude
On a plane.
who is on a plane associated with 9/11. Like, and I was just like, oh, that's they're taking me out of context. Like, you know what it is? And he was like, he turns to me. He was a liberal guy. He's flying back to LA. He goes, hate CNN. He's like, I hate Dana Bash. So he automatically was on my side because of the resentment that he had.
You've flown on planes before, Mooten.
I'm someone who's flown, yeah.
Who the is watching the news on an airplane TV?
Pretty much no one.
Who does this? And then
Who talks to each other on the
yeah,
plane?
and then also like looks to like this is the how could he, dude, I gotta just where's the Hasan tweet about lying being OP? I just gotta start making shit up, man. True. Oh my god.
As towards CNN.
That is. Maybe that's a good place to leave it. That's a
Yeah.
good place to leave it. And look, we love Dana Bash here. Maybe we'll get her here and we can talk about this too. Hasan, thanks for coming on. You'll have to come on again next time you're causing a lot of trouble.
Yeah, I mean, that's probably going to keep happening, it seems. So,
Okay. Well, we'll see it.
thank you for having me.
Of course. Thanks to Hasan Piker for coming on the show. Tommy Lovett and I will be back in your feeds on Tuesday with a new episode.
Jesus. Bourbon lost in Hungary, by the way.